Paleobiology is the study of ancient life through the remains of fossils and other biological evidence. Basically, it's like biology, but focuses more on organisms that lived in the past, like dinosaurs. And a lot of what's out there is still unconfirmed, and because of these gaps in our knowledge, there's a bunch of really weird and strange theories that have come up relating to this field. So in this video, we'll be covering a bunch of those in this weird paleobiology iceberg. Without further ado, let's get straight into the video now with the first entry: warm-blooded dinosaurs. The idea that some dinosaurs might have been warm-blooded, like modern birds and mammals, challenges the traditional view of these creatures as cold-blooded reptiles. This theory is supported by several lines of evidence from paleobiology. First, the bone structure of many dinosaurs suggests that they may have been warm-blooded. Unlike cold-blooded animals, which typically have bones with growth rings like trees, indicating periods of slow or paused growth, many dinosaur bones show continuous growth. This pattern is similar to that seen in warm-blooded animals, which maintain a consistent body temperature that promotes steady growth. And the discovery of fossilized feathers in dinosaurs like Velociraptor and even larger species like Utaranus supports the idea of warm-bloodedness. This is because feathers serve multiple functions, including insulation, which is necessary for maintaining body heat. The presence of feathers might indicate that these dinosaurs needed to preserve body heat, which is a known characteristic of warm-blooded animals. Thirdly, the behavior of dinosaurs might also provide clues about their metabolism. Some dinosaurs, mainly theropods like T-Rex and other bipedal meat eaters, show evidence of very active lifestyles, which could have required the high energy levels supported by warm-blooded metabolism. The position and structure of their leg bones suggests that they were also capable of sustained activities, like running or hunting, which are also typical of warm-blooded animals. And last thing I want to add is isotopic analysis of dinosaur bones can give insights into body temperature. By examining the ratios of certain isotopes in dinosaur bones, scientists can actually infer whether the animals maintain higher body temperatures independently of their environment, a trait of warm-blooded organisms. These pieces of evidence together suggest that at least some dinosaurs could regulate their body temperatures, though not necessarily in the same way modern birds and mammals do. Also, the term mesothermic has also been proposed to describe an intermediate metabolic state, where an animal is not fully warm-blooded but still has some ability to control its body temperature beyond the capabilities of traditional cold-blooded animals. March of Progress. The March of Progress is a well-known illustration that has been widely used in textbooks and media to depict the evolution of primates, culminating in modern humans. Created by Rudolf Zeilinger in the 1960s as part of a larger mural for the Yale University's Peabody Museum of Natural History, this linear depiction is formally titled The Road to Homo sapiens. It shows a series of figures evolving from early primate ancestors to modern humans, standing in a line that progresses from left to right. Despite its popularity, the March of Progress is criticized though by a lot of scientists for several reasons. First, it presents evolution as a linear process aimed at producing a creature that resembles a modern human, which is kinda misleading. The true thing is, evolution is not a linear or goal-oriented process, but a complex web of branches representing different lineages, many of which do not survive into the present. The sequence implies that each stage is a direct descendant of the previous one, which is not necessarily true. For example, modern humans did not evolve directly from the forms that immediately precede us in the illustration, but shared common ancestors with them. The depiction also leaves out numerous other primate lineages that evolved in different directions and doesn't really reflect the true diversity and complexity of primate and human evolution. Also, the March of Progress fosters the misconception that evolution is a progression towards greater complexity or so-called perfection. In reality, evolution is about changes in genetic traits in populations over time, driven by environmental pressures, genetic drift, and mutations, not really a drive towards improvement. In educational and scientific contexts today though, there is an effort to move away from such oversimplified and misleading representations of evolution. More accurate depictions that are kind of more being used now are branching trees or networks that show how various species are interconnected and all the evolutionary paths that lead directly to the present day. Pycnofibers. Pycnofibers are hair-like filaments found on the skin of pterosaurs, which you probably all know were flying reptiles that lived alongside dinosaurs from the late Triassic to the end of the Cretaceous period. These structures are a really important discovery in paleobiology because they offer insights into the appearance, physiology, and behavior of these ancient animals. Unlike the feathers of birds, pycnofibers are not known to have central shaft or barbs, and they appear to be more similar to hair. They were likely composed of keratin, the same protein that makes up human hair and animal fur. The presence of these pycnofibers suggests that pterosaurs had some form of insulation, which could have helped in temperature regulation, like we talked about in the first entry. This feature is particularly intriguing, like we said before, because it supports the idea that pterosaurs, like some dinosaurs, might have been warm-blooded to some degree. Being warm-blooded for pterosaurs in specific would have allowed them to be active over a wide range of temperatures and to sustain high-energy activities like flight. Pycnofibers also indicate that pterosaurs had varied skin coverings, possibly similar to the diverse plumages seen in birds today. This variation could have played roles in camouflage, display behaviors, or even sensory perception. Some studies suggest that these pycnofibers could have also enhanced pterosaurs' sense of touch, similar to how whiskers function in modern mammals. The arrangement and density of these fibers varied among pterosaur species though, which suggests different adaptations to their environments. For instance, species living in colder climates might have had denser insulation. The study of these fibers is kinda challenging though because of their delicate nature, since they are not often well preserved in fossils, and it can be kinda difficult to distinguish them from surrounding material. Research on pycnofibers though is still ongoing, and each new fossil discovery has the potential to reveal more about the life of pterosaurs. Extinction by meteor. The most famous extinction event attributed to a meteor impact is the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event, which occurred about 66 million years ago. This event led to the mass extinction of roughly 75% of Earth's species, including all non-avian dinosaurs. It basically marked the end of the Cretaceous period and the beginning of the Paleogene period, and therefore significantly altered Earth's biological and geological future. The primary evidence for meteor impact being the cause of this extinction event is centered around the discovery of a worldwide layer of sediment enriched with iridium, a rare element on Earth's surface but common in asteroids and comets. This layer is known as the KPG boundary. The high concentration of iridium in this layer suggested an extraterrestrial origin. Further support for this hypothesis came from the discovery of shocked quartz and microscopic spherules that form from vaporized rock, both of which are indicative of the extreme conditions produced by large impact. The location of the impact is believed to be the Chicxulub crater in Mexico. This crater, measuring about 180 kilometers in diameter, was created by an asteroid estimated to be about 10 kilometers wide. The impact would have released an enormous amount of energy equivalent to billions of atomic bombs. This catastrophic event triggered widespread fires, tsunamis, and threw massive amounts of debris into the atmosphere. The immediate aftermath of the impact likely induced sort of a nuclear winter scenario where sunlight was blocked by the dust, soot, and aerosols ejected into the atmosphere. This blockage would have led to a dramatic drop in global temperatures and a disruption of photosynthesis processes, critically affecting the food chain from the bottom up. These environmental changes created harsh conditions for survival, mainly impacting photosynthetic organisms and the species that depended on them, leading to a cascading effect through the food web. In the longer term, the environment gradually stabilized though, and the extinction of the dominant groups like non-avian dinosaurs allowed for the rise of mammals and other groups to fill new ecological niches. This shift represents one of the most significant reorganizations of life on Earth and really shows the impact of sudden environmental changes on evolutionary trajectories. Feathered Dromaeosaurs. These dinosaurs, which are commonly known as raptors, are a group of theropod dinosaurs that are closely related to modern birds. One of the most interesting revelations in paleontology is the discovery that the raptors had feathers. This discovery has significantly influenced our understanding of the appearance and behavior of these ancient predators, as well as the evolutionary connection between dinosaurs and birds. Feathers in raptors were not limited to simple downy coverings, but included complex, veined feathers similar to those seen in modern birds. The presence of these feathers was first established through fossils from China, mainly from the Xi'an Formation, where exceptionally well-preserved specimens of species like Microraptor and Sinornithosaurus were found. These fossils show impressions of feathers along the arms, tails, and sometimes bodies of these creatures, indicating that feathers were widespread among dromaeosaurs. The function of these feathers in raptors likely varied though. In smaller species like Microraptor, feathers might have been used for gliding or even powered flight. Microraptor basically had long flight feathers on its arms and legs, suggesting a forward-wing gliding capability. In larger raptors such as Velociraptor, feathers might not have been used for flight, but could have served other purposes like insulation, display, and signaling to other members of the species. Also, the discovery of quill knobs on the forearm bones of Velociraptor provides direct evidence for the presence of robust, veined feathers similar to those used by birds in flight. So yeah, the diversity of feather structure among these raptors points to their evolutionary experimentation with feathers, which likely started for insulation or display and later adapted in some lineages to enable flight. This variety in feather use reflects a broader trend in dinosaur evolution, where different groups independently developed similar feathers to adapt to their environments. Also, the feathered raptors show the evolutionary connection between theropod dinosaurs and birds. Modern birds are now considered part of the theropod dinosaur lineage, having evolved from small, feathered theropods. This link is supported not only by the feather evidence, but also by similarities in skeletal structures, nesting behaviors, and even lung physiology. Headbutting Pachycephalosaurus. Pachycephalosaurus, known for the distinctive thick-skulled dinosaurs, have interested paleontologists for a long time, with the potential function of their uniquely robust craniums. These dinosaurs, which lived during the late Cretaceous period, had dome skulls that were sometimes several inches thick. The genera such as Pachycephalosaurus, Stygimoloch, and Dracorex display varying degrees of cranial thickness and ornamentation, such as knobs and spikes are on the dome. The primary theory about the function of these thick skulls is that Pachycephalosaurus used them in headbutting behaviors, similar to modern-day animals like bighorn sheep or musk oxen. This hypothesis suggests that these dinosaurs may have engaged in such behaviors for reasons like defending territory, competing for mates, or even just establishing dominance within their groups. The most compelling physical evidence comes from the structure of the skulls themselves though. Their thick, rounded domes are well suited to absorb and redistribute the impact forces involved in head-to-head collisions. The bones in the skull show signs of being extremely dense, a feature that would have helped resist fractures during impacts. Also, some fossilized skulls of Pachycephalosaurus have been found with lesions or other damage that could have resulted from headbutting. However, this hypothesis is not without its controversies and alternative theories. Some researchers argue that the placement of the eyes and neck vertebrae would have made direct head-to-head combat risky and potentially harmful, suggesting that these structures might have been used more for display or ritualized combat, much like the head-shoving seen in some modern birds and reptiles. This type of behavior would have reduced the risk of injury compared to full-force collisions. Also, detailed analysis of the biomechanics of Pachycephalosaur skulls and necks suggests that while they could withstand certain levels of stress, the force of direct head-on impacts as seen in modern headbutting animals could still have been damaging. This has led to some paleontologists to speculate that if headbutting did occur, it might have been directed towards the body rather than the head, or that juveniles engaged in headbutting as their skulls were not fully thickened until they reached maturity. But the study of Pachycephalosaurus and their behavior continues to be an active field of research, with new technologies such as finite element analysis providing more insights into how these creatures might have lived. Sexual dimorphism. In paleobiology, the study of sexual dimorphism involves examining fossil evidence to detect differences between males and females of extinct species. This area of study offers insights into the social behavior, reproductive strategies, and ecological roles in ancient organisms, but does present its challenges because of the incomplete nature of the fossil record. Detecting sexual dimorphism in extinct species is often difficult because, unlike in living species, behaviors are not observable, and soft tissues may show differences like coloration, but are rarely preserved. Also, without direct evidence of reproductive organs, it can be kind of hard to assign sex with certainty to fossil specimens. Researchers rely on size and shape of bones and other hard structures, looking for consistent patterns among multiple specimens that might indicate differences in sex. Among dinosaurs, some of the best candidates for studies of sexual dimorphism like Triceratops and theropods like T. rex. In ceratopsians, variations in frill shape and size might indicate sexual dimorphism, with hypotheses suggesting that larger, more ornate frills were used by males for display during mating rituals or to establish dominance hierarchies. However, definite evidence is kinda lacking, and alternative explanations such as species differentiation or age-related changes also exist. In pterosaurs, some species show variations in crest size and shape, which might indicate sexual dimorphism. Larger crests could have also been used for display or other social interactions. The challenge here, though, lies in determining whether these differences are because of sexual dimorphism or represent different stages of maturation within the species. In marine reptiles like ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs, studies have suggested sexual dimorphism in features like the size or shape of the pelvis, with potential links to differences in reproductive roles. For instance, females might have had wider pelvises to facilitate the birth of live young, as many marine reptiles were believed to give birth to live offspring rather than laying eggs. Understanding sexual dimorphism in extinct species can help reconstruct their mating systems, social structures, and life histories. For instance, pronounced dimorphism might suggest a polygynous mating system where males compete for access to multiple females. It can also hint at ecological roles of sexes, suggesting different feeding strategies or habitat use that might reduce competition for resources between males and females. Birds are dinosaurs. The idea that birds are modern dinosaurs is well supported by extensive scientific evidence and is widely accepted in the field of paleontology. This realization has emerged from decades of fossil discoveries and research that link birds directly to a group of theropod dinosaurs from the Mesozoic era. Birds descended from a specific lineage of theropods known as maniraptorans, which include creatures like Velociraptor and share many features with modern birds. One of the most critical connecting features is the presence of feathers. Initially, feathers might have evolved for insulation or display, and only later were co-opted for flight, like we mentioned. And more recent finds in China of feathered dinosaurs like Microraptor provide strong evidence of these shared characteristics. Over millions of years, these feathered theropods developed adaptations that led to powered flight, like more sophisticated feather arrangements, lighter bones, a more powerful metabolic system, and modified limb structures. The skeletal structure of birds also reveals their dinosaurian heritage. Birds possess a unique fused collarbone known as furicula or wishbone, which is a trait shared with theropod dinosaurs. Their wrists and hands are similar as well, adapted for supporting wings in birds and for various functions in their dinosaur ancestor. Also, the nesting behavior and brooding of eggs observed in some theropod fossils suggest behavioral links between non-avian dinosaurs and birds. The discovery of fossilized nests and embryos indicates that some care for their young and reproductive strategies were also inherited from the dinosaur ancestors. And advancements in molecular biology have reinforced this relationship through comparative genetics, finding that birds share many genetic traits with dinosaurs which aren't present in other animals. This genetic link provides a molecular confirmation of the physical and anatomical evidence seen in fossils. So yeah, in essence, birds are not just descended from dinosaurs, but are considered a living group of theropod dinosaurs, specifically part of the subgroup called Coelosauria. Dinosaur coloration. The topic of dinosaur coloration has long interested scientists and the public alike, with traditional depictions often imagining dinosaurs in drab, monochromatic tones similar to those of modern reptiles. However, recent scientific advancements, mainly in the analysis of fossilized melanosomes, which are pigment-containing organelles found in animal tissues, have revolutionized our understanding of what dinosaurs might have looked like. Melanosomes are microscopic structures that can be preserved in exceptional fossil conditions, and their shape and density can indicate the color they once produced. Different shapes of these melanosomes are associated with different colors in modern birds and reptiles. For example, spherical melanosomes typically correspond to pheomelanin, which produces reddish and yellow colors, whereas elongated forms are associated with eumelanin, which produces black or brown hues. The study of these structures in dinosaur fossils began with the discovery of feathered dinosaurs in the Jurassic and Cretaceous sedimentary rocks of China, where exceptionally well-preserved fossils have allowed paleontologists to undertake detailed analysis of dinosaur skin coverings. For instance, the small theropod Sinosauropteryx was found to have alternating bands of dark and light coloring on its tail, suggesting a striped pattern that could have been used for camouflage or display. Further studies have revealed a diversity of color patterns in other feathered dinosaurs, like Anchiornis, which showed evidence of a complex arrangement of black, white, and red feathers. This has led scientists to theorize that vivid coloration in dinosaurs could have played roles similar to those it plays in modern birds, such as attracting mates, intimidating rivals, or even regulating body temperature. Also, the presence of iridescent feathers has been suggested in some dinosaur species, similar to those seen in some modern birds, where the feather structures create shimmering and shifting colors. This kind of coloration is typically used in visual signaling, further suggesting that visual communication was important among these ancient creatures. These findings suggest that the world of dinosaurs was far more colorful and dynamic than previously imagined, challenging the old stereotypes of gray and green reptilian giants. Instead, it's likely that many dinosaurs, especially the feathered varieties, exhibited a spectrum of colors and patterns that could rival the diversity seen in birds today. Alright, Tier 2, Frill Dilophosaurus. The portrayal of Dilophosaurus with a frill around its neck and the ability to spit venom, as popularized by movies like Jurassic Park, is actually a piece of creative fiction rather than scientific fact. In reality, the paleontological evidence doesn't support the existence of either feature in Dilophosaurus. Dilophosaurus was a real dinosaur from the early Jurassic period, about 193 million years ago. It was one of the earliest large carnivorous dinosaurs, measuring about 20 feet long and weighing around 1,000 pounds. Its most distinctive features, supported by fossil evidence, are a pair of rounded crests on its skull made of thin bone. These crests likely varied between individuals and might have been used for display, species recognition, or other social behaviors. The idea of Dilophosaurus possessing a neck frill, though, comes entirely from its depiction in popular media and has no basis in the fossil record. Such a feature has not been observed in any theropod dinosaur today. Similarly, the ability to spit venom is also a fictional addition, since there's no evidence in any dinosaur species that suggests the development of venomous capabilities similar to those seen in, Jurassic Park. In reconstructing the appearance and behavior of dinosaurs like Dilophosaurus, paleontologists mainly rely on comparisons with modern animals and the anatomical structures preserved in fossils. For Dilophosaurus, studies of the skull and teeth suggest it was a predator, likely preying on smaller dinosaurs and other contemporary animals. Its teeth were sharp and serrated, typical of carnivorous dinosaurs, and its body was well adapted for swift movement, suggesting it had a really active predatory lifestyle. So yeah, even though we know all this about it, the feral and venomous parts are not there in the fossil record. Living fossils. In paleobiology, the term living fossils refers to species that have remained relatively unchanged over millions of years and whose modern forms closely resemble their fossilized ancestors. These species are of great interest in scientific research because they offer insights into evolutionary stability and the environmental conditions of different geological periods. One classic example of a living fossil is the coelacanth, a type of fish that was thought to have gone extinct around 66 million years ago until a living specimen was discovered off the coast of South Africa in 1938. Coelacanths date back nearly 400 million years, and their body structure has changed very little over the vast span of time. They possess unique features like a lobed tail and a special joint in the skull, which have been retained through the ages. Another well-known example is the horseshoe crab. These marine arthropods have a fossil record that dates back about 450 million years. Their basic body plan has basically remained almost unchanged, making them an excellent model for studying physiological and ecological adaptations over geological timescales. The ginkgo tree is another example, often referred to as a living fossil because it's the only surviving member of a group of ancient plants that were widespread over 200 million years ago. The modern ginkgo tree, which is Ginkgo biloba, is remarkably similar to its fossil relatives, with distinctive fan-shaped leaves and a resistance to pollution and disease, which may have contributed to its survival. These species are considered living fossils because there's little to no significant evolutionary change that occurs over a prolonged period. This phenomenon can happen for several reasons, being that if the habitat of a species does not change significantly or if the species is particularly well adapted to a range of conditions. In some cases, living fossils may also inhabit ecological niches with little competition or predation, reducing the need for evolutionary adaptations. Sometimes the anatomical and physiological traits of a species may also be so well suited to survival and reproduction that they remain effective over millions of years. Missing links. The term missing link has historically been used to describe fossils that are seen as transitional forms between major groups of organisms, mainly in the context of human evolution. This idea stems from earlier scientific notions that evolution proceeds in a linear fashion, which aligned with the outdated concept of the Great Chain of Being, where humans were viewed as the ultimate goal of a hierarchical structure of life. However, the term missing link is no longer favored in scientific communities because it inaccurately suggests that evolution is a straightforward, linear process. As we mentioned before too, we now know that evolution is a branching process where various species evolve from common ancestors, but not necessarily in a direct line. Scientists today prefer to use terms like transitional fossils to describe these intermediate forms. Despite its decline in scientific use though, the concept of the missing link was critical in early paleontological studies, especially those relating to human evolution. For instance, the discovery of Homo erectus or Java man by Eugene Dubius in Indonesia was initially celebrated as a missing link between apes and humans. This and other discoveries have helped paint a more nuanced picture of human evolution, showing it as a complex web of branches rather than a simple ladder of progression. Other famous examples often cited as missing links include Lucy, which provided clear evidence of bipedalism, an important step towards modern human anatomy. Each of these fossils has added to a deeper understanding of the evolutionary steps that led to modern humans. All Yesterdays. All Yesterdays is a unique book in the field of paleoart, exploring a new way to look at dinosaurs and other prehistoric animals. Authored by John Conway, C.M. Closman, and Darren Naish, the book challenges the traditional reconstructions of these creatures that are often seen in popular culture and scientific illustration. Instead, it proposes more speculative, sometimes even whimsical interpretations of how extinct animals might have looked based on contemporary understanding of animal anatomy and behavior. The central premise of All Yesterdays is that paleontologists and artists typically reconstruct the appearance and behavior of extinct animals based on the closest living relatives and the most obvious interpretations of the fossil record. However, this method may not always capture the full range of possibilities. The authors argue that if a modern animal skeleton were to be reconstructed without any knowledge of the creature's flesh or behavior, it might look very different from the actual animal. For example, All Yesterdays features illustrations of dinosaurs with strikingly different body shapes, postures, and behaviors that are seldom considered but plausible given what is known about their anatomy. The book includes depictions of giant sauropods resting in watery lagoons, carnivorous dinosaurs in flamboyant mating displays, and small theropods with coats of brightly colored feathers in elaborate patterns. The book also ventures into speculative paleoart, imagining how future paleontologists might misinterpret the fossils of modern animals like cats, swans, or elephants if they had only skeletal remains to go on. These illustrations serve as a reminder of the limitations of our knowledge and the potential for creativity in the reconstruction of extinct species. The legal fossil trade. The legal fossil trade shows the scientific, educational, and cultural understanding of natural history. Fossils, which provide crucial insights into ancient life, climates, and environments, lose much of their scientific value when illegally removed from the original geological context. This not only strips researchers of critical data, but also impacts broader fields of study and public knowledge. Fossils are often subject to strict national and international regulations that aim to protect and preserve natural heritage. These laws typically require any discovered fossils to remain within the country of origin and to be reported to appropriate authorities. The legal trade frequently involves smuggling and the falsification of documents, actions that are criminal and violate these regulations. High-profile cases of legal fossil trading, such as the smuggling of Pterosaurus batar skeleton out of Mongolia, show the global scale of the issue. This particular case ended with the skeleton being returned to Mongolia following legal intervention. Preventive measures against illegal fossil trading include strengthening international collaborations to enforce laws, educating the public about the importance of heritage preservation, and possibly implementing technologies to track and verify fossil origins. Proposals for an international fossil registry aim to facilitate the authentication and tracking of fossils, which could be a pivotal tool in preventing illegal activities. Brontosaurus. Brontosaurus, often referred to in popular culture as the thunder lizard, is a genus of sauropod dinosaurs that lived about 150 to 155 million years ago during the late Jurassic period. For much of the 20th century, Brontosaurus was thought not to be a valid genus. Instead, the dinosaur was classified as a Apatosaurus. This classification stemmed from an early 20th century scientific consensus that considered Brontosaurus merely a species of Apatosaurus due to their skeletal similarities. However, recent studies have revived the Brontosaurus name, distinguishing it once again as its own genus. The confusion began in the late 19th century with the Bone Wars, a period of intense fossil speculation and competition between paleontologists Othniel Charles Marsh and Edward Drinker Cope. In 1877, Marsh discovered and named Apatosaurus, and 2 years later he described and named another skeleton, Brontosaurus. However, because of the rush of the competition, the Brontosaurus specimen was initially reconstructed with the wrong skull, more reminiscent of a Camarasaurus, which then led to questions about its classification. In the early 20th century, paleontologist Elmore Riggs argued that Brontosaurus was not sufficiently distinct from Apatosaurus to warrant its own genus designation, leading to Brontosaurus being under Apatosaurus. This view persisted until a significant 2015 study that used more rigorous statistical methods to compare skeletal details among related dinosaurs. This study concluded that Brontosaurus had enough unique features to be considered a separate genus from Apatosaurus. Brontosaurus was a massive animal, with some estimates suggesting it reached lengths of about 22 meters and weighed up to 15 metric tons. It had a long, whip-like tail, an enormous elongated neck, and it likely held its head relatively low to the ground, grazing on low-lying plants. Its four-style legs supported its massive body, and like other sauropods, it's believed to have spent much of its time eating plants to sustain its enormous bulk. Informally named dinosaurs. Informally named dinosaurs often carry nicknames or provisional names given by the media, the public, or by scientists prior to a formal scientific description. These names aren't officially recognized scientific names, but can be widely known and often carry significant public interest. One famous example is Sue, which is the nickname for one of the largest and most complete T-Rex specimens ever discovered. Found in 1990 by Sue Hendrickson, an explorer and fossil collector, the dinosaur was named in her honor. Sue is housed at the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago now. While not a formal scientific designation, the name is commonly used in public discussions and exhibits about this particular T-Rex fossil. Another example is Scotty, the nickname given to an exceptionally large T-Rex specimen discovered in Saskatchewan, Canada. Named for the bottle of scotch consumed the night it was discovered, Scotty is noted for its size, which some studies suggest might be the largest known specimen of its species. Stan, another T-Rex, was discovered in South Dakota in 1987 and has since been recognized for the excellent condition of its skull. The nickname Stan is derived from the paleontologist Stan Sacrison, who initially found the fossil. Cloning mammoths. Cloning mammoths is an interesting topic that integrates paleobiology, genetics, and advanced biotechnology. It involves potentially using preserved genetic material from mammoth remains, often found in a permafrost, to bring the woolly mammoth or a mammoth-like creature back to life. This idea is part of the broader scientific and ethical discussion surrounding de-extinction, which is the concept of resurrecting extinct species. The feasibility of cloning mammoths largely stems from the relatively well-preserved specimens that have been uncovered in Siberian ice. These remains sometimes include not only bones but also soft tissues and hair, providing a wealth of biological material that is rarely available for most extinct species. In some cases, these remains still contain recoverable DNA, which is crucial for cloning efforts. The envisioned process for cloning a mammoth would likely involve extracting DNA from these preserved tissues and then piecing together these fragments to reconstruct the mammoth's genome. The task, though, is complicated by the degradation of DNA over thousands of years, making it fragmented and chemically modified. After assembling a sufficiently complete genome, scientists would need to insert this genetic material into an egg cell from a closely related species like the Asian elephant, which would act as a surrogate mother. Despite the technical challenges, though, the prospect of cloning mammoths raises a lot of interest for several reasons. Scientifically, it could provide insights into mammoth biology, their ecological roles, and the environments of the past. Ethically and ecologically, it prompts discussions about the implications of bringing back species that have been extinct for thousands of years, including the potential impacts on modern ecosystems and the ethical considerations of such interventions. Godzilla is a dinosaur. The debate about whether Godzilla can be classified as a dinosaur arises from its portrayal in various films and the characteristics that link it to prehistoric creatures. Although Godzilla is a fictional creature from Japanese cinema, its depiction shares several traits with real-life dinosaurs, mainly those from the group known as archosaurs, which includes dinosaurs and modern crocodiles and alligators. Godzilla is typically shown as an enormous creature that walks upright on its hind legs, which is really similar to many theropod dinosaurs, including T-Rex. This bipedal posture is a defining trait of many dinosaurs, where the legs are positioned directly beneath the body, unlike the sprawling limbs of modern reptiles like lizards and crocodiles. Further analysis of Godzilla's anatomy based on fan-created X-ray illustrations suggests the presence of other dinosaurian features. These illustrations show that Godzilla has a skull with openings in the front of its eyes and a possible opening in the lower jaw, features that are typical of archosaurs. And the illustrations also indicate a ridge on the femur bone and teeth set in sockets, which are common in dinosaurs. Given these anatomical details, some might argue that Godzilla could be considered the type of dinosaur, but a highly fictionalized and exaggerated one. Its size and abilities, like breathing radioactive fire, clearly depart from any known dinosaur and enter the realm of fantasy. However, the basic skeletal and dental structures align closely enough with known dinosaur traits that, within the fictional context of the films, Godzilla can be described as a dinosaur-like creature or an archosaur. Feathered T-Rex. The idea that T-Rex, one of the most iconic dinosaurs, might have had feathers has gained traction among paleontologists in recent years. This notion is supported by discoveries of related theropod dinosaurs that have preserved evidence of feathers. The presence of feathers in these relatives suggests that feathering might have been a common feature among theropods, including possibly T-Rex itself. The evidence for this primarily comes from fossils in China, where species like Euthyranus huali, a relative of T-Rex, have been found with clear impressions of feathers. These feathers weren't necessarily like those of modern birds, but range from simple filaments to more complex structures that could have been used for insulation or display. While direct fossil evidence of feathers on T-Rex hasn't really been found, the phylogenetic relationship between T-Rex and other feathered theropods suggests that at least some juvenile T-Rexes may have had a coat of downy feathers. This is mainly plausible given that feathers could have provided insulation, which would have been beneficial to young dinosaurs trying to maintain body heat. The possibility of adult T-Rexes having feathers is also debated. Sometimes it's proposed that as T-Rexes grew larger, they might have lost their feathers due to the lesser need for insulation, similar to how modern elephants have relatively hairless skin compared to smaller, more hairy mammals. The climate during the time of T-Rex, along with its large body size, which could generate significant heat, might have also allowed T-Rexes to rely less on feathers for warmth. Aquatic sauropods. The idea that sauropods, the group of long-necked and massive dinosaurs, were aquatic or semi-aquatic animals, has been a subject of debate among paleontologists. Traditionally, some early 20th century scientists believed that due to their enormous size and seemingly unwieldy body structures, sauropods must have lived in water to support their weight. This belief was supported by depictions of the dinosaurs with their bodies submerged in water, suggesting that aquatic habitats would have held buoy in massive forms, making movement easier and reducing stress on their limbs and joints. However, more recent research and fossil evidence have largely debunked the idea of sauropods being aquatic. Studies of sauropod bone structure and density show that their bones were highly pneumatic, which would basically mean it was filled with air sacs, which is inconsistent with an aquatic lifestyle that would require denser bones to help maintain buoyancy control. Also, the positioning and structure of their nostrils are high on their heads, similar to those of other terrestrial animals, making it kinda impractical for sauropods to have spent such time submerged. Footprints and trackways of sauropods also provide critical evidence against the aquatic theory. These trace fossils frequently show sauropods moving in groups over land, with footprints indicating they walked with their legs directly under their bodies, supporting substantial body weight on land rather than in water. The tracks often display no signs of drag marks that would be expected if the bodies were being partially supported by water. Also, the diet of sauropods, which primarily consists of vegetation, suggests a terrestrial lifestyle as they likely fed on a large amount of plant material that would be more accessible on land. The teeth and neck anatomy of sauropods, designed for reaching high into trees to feed, also don't support an aquatic feeding behavior, but rather an adaptation to grazing on tall forest vegetation. While it's likely that sauropods may have ventured into shallow waters occasionally, perhaps to cool off or to escape predators, the prevailing scientific consensus now supports a view of sauropods as predominantly terrestrial animals. This shift in understanding shows a broader trend in paleontology that relies more heavily on detailed biomechanical analysis and ecological considerations than on earlier, more speculative models. Spinosaurus physiology. Spinosaurus is one of the most interesting dinosaurs because of its unique physiology and adaptations that suggest a semi-aquatic lifestyle, which is a rarity among known dinosaurs. First discovered in the early 20th century, Spinosaurus has undergone a lot of reinterpretations as more fossils have been unearthed and studies conducted. Spinosaurus is the largest known carnivorous dinosaur, even larger than T-Rex. It had a distinctive body shape with a long, narrow skull similar to that of a crocodile, which indicates a specialization in catching fish. Its nostrils were located high up on the skull, allowing it to breathe while the majority of its body was submerged. One of the most striking features of Spinosaurus, though, is the massive sail on its back, formed by long spinal vertebrae. While the exact function of this sail is still debated, hypotheses include thermoregulation, where the sail would help to regulate body temperature by dissipating heat, or maybe as a display structure used to attract mates or intimidate rivals. Spinosaurus's limbs and body proportions also support its semi-aquatic nature. Its hind limbs were shorter and possibly more suited for swimming, a trait that contrasts a lot with other theropod dinosaurs, which typically had long, powerful hind limbs for running. Also, its paddle-like feet and dense bodies are characteristics similar to those of aquatic animals, helping it to maneuver effectively in water. The diet of Spinosaurus likely included fish, evidenced by the discovery of fish scales and bones in association with fossils. Its conical teeth were adept at catching and holding slippery prey, similar to those of modern fish-eating animals. Recent studies using digital reconstructions of Spinosaurus fossils suggest it had a center of mass that made walking on two legs on land awkward, further supporting the idea that it spent a lot of time in water. These adaptations make Spinosaurus one of the few dinosaurs that might have led a lifestyle similar to that of modern crocodilians, which are both terrestrial and aquatic. Tier 3. Nanotyrannus. Nanotyrannus is a controversial genus of theropod dinosaur that was originally identified from a partial skull discovered in Montana in 1942. The debate surrounding Nanotyrannus centers on whether it represents a distinct genus or simply a juvenile specimen of the well-known T-Rex. The original specimen attributed to Nanotyrannus is distinguished by certain features in its skull, which include more teeth and a differently shaped brain case compared to adult T-Rex specimens. Proponents of the Nanotyrannus genus argue that these differences are sufficient to warrant a separate classification. However, many paleontologists argue that the features of Nanotyrannus fall within the range of what might be expected in a juvenile T-Rex, noting that dinosaur skulls can undergo significant changes as they grow. This viewpoint has been strengthened by comparative analysis of known juvenile T-Rex specimens, which show similarities in skull morphology to Nanotyrannus. The ongoing debate often hinges on detailed comparisons of skull anatomy and tooth structure. And adding to the controversy, a well-preserved skeleton known as Jane, discovered in 2001, was initially thought to possibly belong to Nanotyrannus because of its small size and the characteristics of its skull and teeth. However, subsequent research has suggested that Jane is likely a juvenile T-Rex, which further complicates the classification of Nanotyrannus. Dinosauroid. The dinosauroid is a hypothetical concept that imagines what a dinosaur, specifically a theropod dinosaur like Trudon, might have evolved into had they not gone extinct at the end of the Cretaceous period. This idea was proposed by paleontologist Dale Russell in 1982, who collaborated with artist Ron Seguin to create a model of this so-called dinosaur man. The dinosauroid was envisioned as a humanoid creature standing upright at about 4 feet tall, with a large brain and forward-looking eyes, but retaining reptilian features such as scaly skin and a lack of external ears. Russell's hypothesis stemmed from observations of the relatively large brain size of Trudon compared to other dinosaurs, suggesting that high potential for intelligence. He speculated that over millions of years of evolution, Trudon might have developed advanced cognitive abilities and perhaps a humanoid stance to free up its forelimbs for tool use, similar to the evolutionary path of humans. Russell's dinosauroid proposal was pretty controversial though, and received a mixed response from the scientific community. Critics argued that the humanoid form of the dinosauroid was overly influenced by human-centered thinking. They point out that convergent evolution does not necessarily lead to human-like forms, and that other intelligent animals on Earth, like crows and octopuses, have vastly different body plans than humans. The dinosauroid concept is often referenced in discussions of speculative evolution and astrobiology to explore the possibilities of convergent evolution and the forms that alien intelligence might take. What's largely a thought experiment rather than a serious scientific prediction, the dinosauroid continues to be a popular topic for its interesting blend of dinosaur science and imaginative speculation about what might have been. The New Dinosaurs. The New Dinosaurs and Alternative Evolution is a speculative evolution book written by the paleontologist Douglas Dixon. Published in 1988, it explores an interesting thought experiment, being what might have happened if the Cretaceous Paleogene extinction event had not occurred and non-avian dinosaurs had continued to evolve into the present day. Dixon uses his knowledge of evolutionary biology and paleontology to imagine how various types of dinosaurs might have adapted to modern ecosystems across the globe. Dixon's book has a lot of illustrations and describes various fictional dinosaur species, each adapted to specific ecological niches. For example, some dinosaurs in the book have evolved in ways that mirror the adaptations of modern mammals, such as filling the roles of herbivores in various forested, plain, and mountainous habitats, or even adapting to Arctic conditions, deserts, and even human-altered environments. The New Dinosaurs is part of a genre of speculative biology that includes Dixon's other works like After Man, a Zoology of the Future, where he envisions the future evolution of life on Earth. These works blend scientific rigor with creative speculation to basically engage readers with both the processes of evolution and the possibilities that might come from it. Megalodon Lives. Megalodon, the Monster Shark Lives is a 2013 film aired on the Discovery Channel which purported to explore the possibility that the prehistoric shark Megalodon could still be alive. Presented as a documentary, the film included staged videos, fabricated photographs, and scripted first-person accounts supposedly from professionals in fields like marine biology. The narrative suggested an ongoing presence of the Megalodon despite widespread scientific consensus on its extinction millions of years ago. This program, much like the Animal Planet pseudo-documentary Mermaids the Body Found, faced a lot of backlash from both the scientific community and viewers for presenting fictional content under the guise of a factual documentary. The controversy primarily stemmed from the misleading presentation, which many felt betrayed the educational and scientific mission typically associated with the Discovery Channel. The show, though, attracted a large audience, becoming the most watched Shark Week broadcast to date, with 4.8 million viewers. This viewership was partly driven by the subsequent public and critical reaction, which criticized the network for blurring the lines between science and fiction. Following the outcry though, Discovery Channel added disclaimers at the start and end of the broadcast indicating the program's fictional nature. In response to the controversy and confusion among viewers, evidenced by a poll where about 70% believed in the existence of Megalodon after watching the show, Discovery aired a follow-up program during Shark Week 2018 titled Megalodon Fact vs. Fiction, which brought experts to discuss and reflect on the original program and its impact. The Bone Wars. The Bone Wars, also known as the Great Dinosaur Rush, was a period of intense and ruthless fossil hunting and discovery during the late 19th century in the United States. This period was characterized by a bitter rivalry between two pioneering American paleontologists, Edward Drinker Cope of the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia and Othniel Charles Marsh of the Peabody Museum of Natural History at Yale. Starting in the 1870s and continuing through the 1890s, the competition between Cope and Marsh led to significant advancements in the field of paleontology through the discovery and descriptions of numerous North American dinosaur fossils. However, their feud was marked by a series of unethical behaviors, scientific malpractices, and mutual animosity. Both scientists resorted to bribery, theft, and the attempt to discredit each other's scientific findings. They hired spies, sabotaged each other's work, and hastily published findings without thorough research, all in an attempt to outdo one another. The rivalry began when Marsh publicly pointed out errors in Cope's reconstruction of the Elasmosaurus skeleton, where Cope had mistakenly placed the head at the end of the tail. Humiliated, Cope sought to avenge his professional reputation by proving himself a superior paleontologist. This ignited decades of contention, during which both men exhausted their fortunes in pursuit of paleontological supremacy. The Bone Wars resulted in the discovery of 142 new species of dinosaurs, introducing notable species like Triceratops, Allosaurus, and Stegosaurus to science. Despite these contributions though, their feud ultimately had many negative consequences for both men. Financially ruined and professionally discredited by the end of their lives, their legacies were tainted by the very scandal they had created. Fossil chimeras. Fossil chimeras refer to specimens that have been mistakenly or deliberately assembled from parts of different organisms, often leading to incorrect reconstructions of supposed prehistoric creatures. These mix-ups can occur for various reasons, ranging from simple mistakes during the excavation process to intentional fraud aimed at increasing the value or significance of a fossil. The concept draws its name from the chimera of Greek mythology, a creature composed of parts from different animals. During excavation, fossils from multiple species can become intermingled, especially if they are fragmented or incomplete. Without careful analysis, these mixed remains might be incorrectly assembled into a single specimen. An example is the initial reconstruction of the dinosaur Spinosaurus, where the original skeletal reconstruction was based on incomplete fossils that led to inaccuracies in its portrayal. Over time, further discoveries necessitate significant revisions to its appearance and lifestyle interpretations. Some fossil chimeras are created intentionally to deceive. The most famous example is the Piltdown Man, a purported missing link between apes and humans found in England in 1912. The fossils were later revealed to be a deliberate hoax, combining the lower jawbone of an orangutan with the cranium of a fully modern human. This not only misled the scientific community for decades, but also misdirected research on human evolution. And the commercial fossil trade can sometimes encourage the creation of chimeras. Sellers may assemble more complete or visually appealing specimens by combining parts from multiple individuals or even different species. Such practices are particularly tempting in markets where more complete fossils can fetch higher prices. Shrink wrapping. Shrink wrapping in the context of paleontological reconstructions refers to the practice of depicting dinosaur and other prehistoric animal fossils with minimal or no flesh on their bodies so that the skin appears tightly fitted to the bones. This can often result in overly lean and unrealistic interpretations of what these creatures would have looked like when they were alive. This tendency to shrink wrap skeletal remains stems from a lack of comprehensive data about the muscle, fat, and other soft tissues that would have surrounded the bones of these ancient animals. Consequently, artists and scientists may default to placing the skin directly over the skeleton without considering the soft tissues that are typically present in living animals. One of the criticisms of shrink wrapping is that it ignores how much living animals vary in their soft tissue coverage. For example, animals like elephants and rhinoceroses have thick layers of skin and fat that obscure much of their underlying skeletal structure. If these animals were reconstructed in the same way as many dinosaur fossils, they would appear dramatically different and much less accurate. In more recent years, there's been a push within the paleontological community towards more realistic and robust reconstructions. Advances in understanding muscle attachment points, the discovery of related species with well-preserved soft tissues, and comparisons with modern animals have all contributed to this shift. For instance, the discovery of fossilized fat deposits and skin impressions helps paleontologists better estimate the thickness and texture of the skin, which can significantly alter the appearance of a reconstructed animal. Also, the practice of creating more fleshed out reconstructions is not just about visual accuracy, but also about providing more insight into the biology and ecology of these ancient creatures. Understanding their body composition helps in studying their movement, behavior, and just how they interacted with their environment. Loch Ness Plesiosaur. The idea that a plesiosaur or a similar prehistoric marine reptile might be living in Scotland's Loch Ness has fueled the famous legend of the Loch Ness Monster, or Nessie. The speculation that Nessie could be a plesiosaur originated not long after the creature gained widespread attention in 1933, following reports of sightings and ambiguous photographs. The plesiosaur theory plays on the fascination with and mystery surrounding these ancient marine reptiles, which are known from fossil records to have lived until the end of the Cretaceous period, about 66 million years ago. Plesiosaurs were long-necked marine reptiles with small heads, 4 flippers, and often quite elongated bodies. This description superficially matches some eyewitness accounts of Nessie. However, several critical factors make the plesiosaur hypothesis highly unlikely, being that plesiosaurs, along with all non-avian dinosaurs and many marine reptiles, are believed to have gone extinct during the mass extinction event at the end of the Cretaceous period. Also, there's no credible evidence that any plesiosaurs survived beyond this point. Loch Ness formed around 10,000 years ago during the last ice age and is a freshwater lake. Plesiosaurs were marine reptiles adapted to saltwater environments. Living in freshwater lakes would require significant physiological adaptations that are not evident in known plesiosaur fossils. The cold waters of Loch Ness and the limited available food supply would also make it difficult for a large marine reptile like a plesiosaur to survive. These creatures would have required a substantial diet to support the large size, and Loch Ness likely could not sustain such a large predator. Despite extensive searches though, including sonar surveys and underwater photography, no conclusive evidence has been found to suggest a large creature living in Loch Ness. All scientific investigations have failed to find credible evidence of Nessie being a plesiosaur or any other large unknown aquatic animal. Stegosaur plate speculation. The function of the bony plates along the back of Stegosaurus, a well-known dinosaur from the Jurassic period, has long been up to debate and speculation among paleontologists. These distinctive plates, which vary in size and are aligned in 2 parallel rows down the animal's back and tail, are among the most iconic dinosaur features, and several theories have been proposed regarding their purpose. One popular theory is that these plates were used for thermoregulation or temperature control. The plates could have acted as heat regulators, absorbing or releasing heat depending on the environment. This theory is supported by the plates' large surface area and a network of blood vessels, which could have allowed the dinosaur to warm up by orienting the plates toward the sun or cool down by positioning them away from it. Some studies using thermal imaging on models of Stegosaurus plates suggest that they could indeed have helped to stabilize the animal's temperature. Another theory suggests that the plates were used for defense. When threatened, a Stegosaurus might have presented its side, displaying its plates and the spikes at the end of its tail to a predator. While the plates themselves might not have been really effective as a physical shield against attacks, their imposing appearance could have deterred potential predators or competed over mates. Display and species recognition are also considered potential functions for these plates. The plates, which may have been brightly colored, could have been used to attract mates, similar to how some modern animals use colorful and prominent features to signal their suitability as partners. Alternatively, the plates could have helped Stegosaurus individuals recognize members of their own species from a distance, which is particularly useful in social interaction and during mating season. Despite these theories though, there's no consensus on the primary function of the Stegosaurus plates. It's likely that the plates served multiple purposes, combining practical functions like thermoregulation and defense with social functions like species recognition and sexual display. This multifunctionality and anatomical features is common in many modern animals and could have been just as likely in dinosaurs. Tier 4. Tully Monster. The Tully Monster, officially known as Tully Monstrum gregarium, is a mysterious creature that lived about 300 million years ago during the Pennsylvanian period. This organism was first discovered in 1958 by Francis Tully in the Mazon Creek fossil beds located in Illinois, USA. The state later designated it as the official state fossil. The Tully Monster is especially famous for its bizarre body structure, which challenges easy classification into any known group of either vertebrates or invertebrates. Its body was elongated and soft, measuring up to 35 meters in length. The most striking features of the Tully Monster include a long, flexible proboscis that ends with a mouth structured like a pincer and eyes that are set on a bar across its midsection, giving it a sort of hammerhead appearance. Despite extensive study, the precise nature of the Tully Monster remains unclear, with various hypotheses suggesting it may be a type of mollusk, an arthropod, or even a basal vertebrate. Initially, it was frequently considered a type of worm or mollusk because of its soft body and lack of apparent backbone. However, more recent analysis, particularly those involving the chemical composition of its fossils, suggests that it may have been more closely related to vertebrates. This is supported by features such as eye structure and the possible presence of a notochord, a primitive backbone. The Tully Monster's habitat was likely marine or estuarine, and it's thought to have been a carnivorous creature given its predatory mouthparts. Its mode of life remains as puzzling as body plan though, being that whether it was a bottom dweller, a swimmer, or something in between is still a topic of debate. David Peters. David Peters is a controversial figure in the field of paleontology, known for his work on pterosaurs and other prehistoric reptiles. His research has often sparked debates within the scientific community, mainly because of his methodologies and some unconventional findings. Peters is perhaps most noted for his use of a technique called digital tracing to extract details from fossil photographs. He claims this method allows him to identify soft tissue and other subtle anatomical features that are not easily noticed. Using this technique, Peters has proposed several radical reinterpretations of various prehistoric animals, suggesting, for example, new classifications and relationships among pterosaurs and challenging established views on dinosaur and reptile evolution. However, many in the paleontological community have criticized Peters' work, pointing out potential issues with his digital tracing technique. Critics argue that this method may lead to seeing patterns or details that aren't actually present in the fossils, which potentially leads to incorrect conclusions. This criticism is compounded by the fact that peer-reviewed scientific journals have often rejected Peters' findings, and his work is primarily published in non-peer-reviewed venues or self-published books. Despite the controversy though, Peters has a following among amateur paleontologists and dinosaur enthusiasts who find his reconstructions and theories intriguing and refreshingly different from mainstream scientific opinions. His work continues to stimulate discussion and occasionally forces professional paleontologists to reevaluate certain assumptions and methodologies in their field. Baron Franz Nopcsa. Baron Franz Nopcsa was a pioneering figure in the field of paleontology, mainly known for his early contributions to the study of dinosaurs and his groundbreaking ideas in evolutionary biology and tectonics. Born into Hungarian nobility in 1877, Nopcsa's interest in paleontology began in his youth when dinosaur bones were discovered on his family's estate in Transylvania. Nopcsa's scientific career was marked by several significant contributions and eccentric, sometimes controversial theories. One of his most notable ideas was the theory of insular dwarfism, which he formulated after studying dinosaur fossils found in the Hitang region of Romania. He proposed that these dinosaurs were smaller than their mainland counterparts due to the limited resources and isolation on a landmass that was, during the Mesozoic era, an island. This hypothesis has been widely accepted and corroborated by subsequent research in other parts of the world. In addition to his work on dinosaurs, Nopcsa was a pioneer in the field of paleontology, emphasizing the importance of understanding the life history and ecology of ancient organisms, not just their skeletal structures. He was one of the first to suggest that birds evolved from dinosaurs, a theory that is now broadly supported within the scientific community. Nopcsa's life, though, was as colorful as his scientific career. He was known for his adventurous spirit, participating in espionage during World War I, and even attempting to become the king of Albania, a country he traveled extensively and studied from a geological and socio-political perspective. Despite his contributions to science, Nopsh's life ended tragically, being he struggled with financial difficulties and personal issues, leading to him taking his own life in 1933. Despite this though, his work has left a lasting impact on the field of paleontology, geology, and evolutionary biology, making him one of the most interesting and innovative figures in the history of these sciences. Proavis. Proavis was a hypothetical creature imagined by the British paleontologist Gerhard Hillman in the early 20th century. Hillman proposed the existence of Proavis while grappling with the origins and evolutions of birds. His ideas were presented in his influential book, The Origins of Birds, published in 1926. At that time, the fossil record connecting birds and dinosaurs was sparse, and there were significant gaps in understanding how birds had evolved from reptilian ancestors. Hillman's Proavis was conceived as an intermediate form between small theropod dinosaurs and the earliest known birds like Archaeopteryx. He imagined Proavis as a small, tree-dwelling animal capable of gliding between trees, possessing both reptilian and avian features. This creature was not based on direct fossil evidence, but rather constructed from Hillman's synthesis of available anatomical data from both birds and reptiles. Hillman proposed that Proavis would have had feathers, which were primarily used for insulation and possibly gliding, before the evolution of powered flight. He also suggested that it had a body plan that facilitated bipedal movement on the ground, much like modern birds, but retained many primitive reptilian traits. For instance, he envisioned Proavis with a long, bony tail, a feature prevalent in many dinosaurs but not present in modern birds. An important aspect of Hillman's work was his rejection of the idea that birds were directly descended from dinosaurs, a view influenced by the prevailing scientific opinion of its time, which was skeptical of the dinosaur-bird connection due to the supposed absence of collarbones in dinosaurs. He believed that birds evolved from a different group of reptiles. However, his views on the matter were later proven incorrect, as more dinosaur fossils were discovered with clear evidence of collarbones and other bird-like features, most notably in theropods, which are now understood to be the direct ancestors of birds. The Proavis concept, while hypothetical and not supported by direct fossil evidence, still played a crucial role in stimulating discussion and further research into avian evolution. It helped bridge some conceptual gaps between the anatomy of Archaeopteryx and that of modern birds, offering a plausible, if speculative, model of transitional anatomy. Hillman's ideas basically laid foundational concepts that would later be confirmed and expanded upon the discovery of more complete dinosaur fossils showing clear avian characteristics, ultimately leading to the widespread acceptance of birds as living dinosaurs. Crystal Palace dinosaurs. The Crystal Palace dinosaurs are a series of sculptures that were unveiled in 1854 in Crystal Palace Park, London. They represent one of the world's first attempts to create life-size models of extinct animals in the public space, and were designed and sculpted by Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins under the scientific direction of Sir Richard Owen, who was a celebrated paleontologist and anatomist. Owen is also known for coining the term Dinosauria, which means terrible lizards. These historic sculptures were created as part of the renovations at Crystal Palace Park, following the relocation of the Crystal Palace, a large glass and iron structure originally built for the Great Exhibition of 1851, to this new site in South London. The park was envisioned as an educational and cultural space for the public, and the dinosaur sculptures were meant to be a key attraction. The sculptures themselves include representations of various prehistoric creatures, not just dinosaurs, but also extinct mammals and marine reptiles. Some of the notable dinosaur figures include Iguanodon, Megalosaurus, and Hylosaurus, which are three of the earliest dinosaur genera discovered. Also, there's other models of other prehistoric animals such as the marine reptile Ichthyosaurus and the early mammal-like reptile Labyrinthodon. While they're first created, these models were based on the best available scientific knowledge, which was quite limited at the time. And many of these sculptures are anatomically inaccurate by modern standards. For example, the Iguanodon is depicted with a horn on its nose, a feature based on a misinterpreted thumb spike. Despite these inaccuracies though, the Crystal Palace dinosaurs were pioneering in the field of paleoart, which significantly influenced the perception of prehistoric life. Over the years, the sculptures have undergone various restoration efforts to preserve them as important cultural and historical artifacts. Three-brained herbivores. The concept of three-brained herbivores, mainly among some herbivorous species, is a fascinating topic that stems from a historical misunderstanding about dinosaur anatomy and behavior. This notion primarily centered around Stegosaurus. The myth of Stegosaurus having 3 brains arose from the early 20th century observations of its unusually small head and brain case, which seemed disproportionately small for such a large body size. Some paleontologists speculate that this dinosaur required supplementary neutral centers to manage its bulky frame and control distant body parts such as its tail. It was hypothesized that these additional brains were located in the hips and near the base of the tail to help coordinate complex movements. This theory suggested that a secondary brain or neural center might have existed in the pelvic region within the cavity of the spinal column that was larger than the cavity that housed the actual brain. This idea was used to explain how Stegosaurus could have managed motor control and sensory processing with such a small cranial brain. However, this notion of multiple brains is kind of misleading. Modern paleontology clarifies that what may have been interpreted as spaces for additional brains were likely just areas with high concentrations of glycogen bodies or an enlargement of the spinal cord itself, which are common in many vertebrates, including birds. These structures serve various physiological purposes, but don't function as independent brains. The 3-brain theory has since been debunked, as further research and better understanding of dinosaur neuroanatomy have shown that all dinosaurs, including Stegosaurus, had only 1 brain. The enlargement in the spinal column likely provided enhanced control over the hind limbs and tail, assisting in basic locomotive and defensive behaviors, but it didn't act as a separate center of cognition. What is Helicoprion? Helicoprion is a genus of extinct shark-like fish best known for its bizarre spiral arrangement of teeth, which has puzzled scientists since its fossils were first discovered in the early 20th century. This creature lived during the late Carboniferous to the early Permian period, about 290 million years ago. The most distinctive feature of Helicoprion is its tooth whorl, a spiral of continuous teeth that appear to have been located in the lower jaw, though initially there was much debate about its placement and function. Early reconstructions varied widely, with some placing its tooth whorl within the mouth and others hypothesizing it as a defensive or aggressive tool protruding from the snout or even the tail. Recent research, however, supports the idea that the tooth whorl was indeed situated in the lower jaw. Advanced imaging techniques have allowed scientists to reconstruct Helicoprion's jaw more accurately, suggesting that the whorl functions somewhat like a circular saw. It's believed that Helicoprion uses unique teeth to slice into soft-bodied prey into the ocean, such as squid-like creatures. The continuous growth of the teeth arranged in a spiral allowed older, worn teeth to be replaced by newer, sharper teeth behind them, providing a continually effective feeding mechanism. Helicoprion was basically a member of the group of cartilaginous fishes known as elasmobranchs. And unlike many other fossilized creatures, Helicoprion's skeleton was made of cartilage, which does not fossilize as well as bone. This is the reason why most Helicoprion fossils consist almost exclusively of their teeth whorls, making full reconstructions of the animal speculative beyond the known dental structures. Gliding Longisquama. Longisquama is an extinct reptile known from fossils found in what is now Kyrgyzstan, dating back to the Middle to Late Triassic period, about 230 million years ago. This small reptile is particularly famous for its distinctive dorsal appendages, which resemble long, feather-like structures. These appendages have sparked significant interest and debate among paleontologists regarding their function and their implications for the evolution of flight in vertebrates. The unique structures on Longisquama's back consist of elongated scales or spines, each topped with what appears to be a series of feather-like fronds. These are not true feathers like those seen in birds, but do share some superficial similarities. The longest of these structures measures up to twice the length of Longisquama's body, suggesting they were highly conspicuous. One hypothesis is that Longisquama used these elongated scales for gliding. The structures might have acted as a type of primitive wing, allowing Longisquama to leap and glide between trees, similar to the way modern flying squirrels or gliding lizards move through forest canopies. Such a mode of locomotion would have been advantageous in avoiding predators or moving quickly between food sources in a densely forested environment. However, the gliding hypothesis is not universally accepted. Some paleontologists argue that the appendages may have been used primarily for display purposes, such as attracting mates or deterring rivals, rather than for gliding. The fossil record for Longisquama is quite sparse too, and the only known specimen with well-preserved appendages does not provide clear evidence of muscles or other anatomical features that would indicate adaptations for powered flight or sophisticated gliding. Also, the arrangement structure of the appendages raise questions about their aerodynamic effectiveness. Unlike the wings of birds or flying membrane of flying squirrels, Longisquam's appendages were rigid and did not form a continuous surface, which would likely limit their ability to create lift or control glide. Dolo's iguanodon. Dolo's iguanodon refers to the significant contributions made by Belgian paleontologist Louis Dolo regarding our understanding of the dinosaur iguanodon. Around the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Dolo extensively studied and reconstructed numerous iguanodon skeletons, which had been discovered in a coal mine in Belgium in 1878. These findings were pivotal as they were some of the best preserved dinosaur fossils of the time, allowing Dolo a rare opportunity to study these ancient creatures in detail. Iguanodon was one of the first dinosaurs to be discovered and scientifically described, as it's known for its distinctive thumb spikes and herbivorous diet. While iguanodon fossils were initially found in the early 19th century by Gideon Mantell in England, their reconstructions were somewhat speculative. Early reconstructions mistakenly portrayed them as quadrupedal and with a horn-like spike on their nose, a misinterpretation of the thumb spike. Dolo's work in the late 1800s transformed the understanding of iguanodon. He meticulously constructed the skeletons to suggest that iguanodon was primarily bipedal and could potentially assume a quadrupedal stance as well. This was a significant shift in the portrayal of the creature, influencing how dinosaurs were perceived in terms of posture and locomotion. And one of Dolo's lasting legacies in paleontology is Dolo's law, which he formulated based on his observations. This principle posits that evolution is not reversible, meaning that a complex trait lost in the course of evolution will not reappear in the same form in that lineage. While this law has been debated and has seen exceptions in the light of modern genetic understanding, it was an influential idea that guided much of the early 20th century evolutionary thought. Piltdown Man. Piltdown Man refers to one of the most infamous scientific hoaxes in history. It began in 1912 when amateur archaeologist Charles Dawson claimed to have discovered the missing link between apes and humans in the Piltdown gravel beds of Sussex, England. Dawson brought in Arthur Smith Woodward, the keeper of geology at the British Museum, to help with further excavations and study. Together, they presented findings that included fragments of a skull, a jawbone with teeth, and simple tools, which they claimed belonged to a previously unknown early human, dubbed Dawson's Dawn Man. The supposed Piltdown Man was presented as a sensation, allegedly confirming the expectation that the earliest humans would have a large brain but an ape-like jaw. This find seemed to fit neatly into existing theories of human evolution at the time, mainly in Britain, where it was hoped that such a significant discovery would be made. However, doubts about Piltdown Man's authenticity began to surface soon after its discovery. Over the next several decades, as more genuine early human fossils were discovered, such as those in Africa, they showed characteristics quite different from Piltdown Man. These new fossils had small brains and more human-like teeth and jaws, conflicting with the Piltdown findings. The hoax was definitely exposed in 1953 through a series of rigorous tests. Fluorine dating and analysis of the bone chemistry showed that the skull was only a few thousand years old, while the jawbone was that of an orangutan, and both had been artificially stained to match the local gravels. The teeth had been filed down to stimulate wear patterns of a human-like diet. The exposure of the hoax embraced the scientific community and led to a more critical approach to fossil authentication and analysis. The identity of the forger remains debated, with suspects including Dawson himself, who likely had the opportunity and motive, as well as several other individuals who were part of or connected to the initial discoveries and subsequent studies. Triassic Kraken. The Triassic Kraken is a speculative and controversial hypothesis put forward by paleontologist Mark McMenamin in 2011. McMenamin suggested that an enormous octopus-like cephalopod could have existed during the Triassic period, potentially explaining certain unusual arrangements of ichthyosaur bones found in Nevada's Berlin Ichthyosaur State Park. The ichthyosaur bones at the site are organized in what appears to be deliberate patterns, rather than random scatterings that might be expected from natural processes. McMenamin interpreted this arrangement as evidence of the ichthyosaurs being intentionally arranged by a large predator, similar to the behavior of barn octopuses, which are known to manipulate their environment and occasionally arrange their prey's bones. McMenamin proposed that this Triassic predator was similar to a giant octopus or squid and dubbed it a kraken after the legendary sea monster from Scandinavian folklore. He suggested that the kraken might have killed the ichthyosaurs, possibly by drowning or breaking their necks, and then arranged their bones, possibly as part of a mating display. The hypothesis attracted attention and sparked a lot of debate when it was presented. Many paleontologists end up criticizing it for lack of rigorous scientific evidence. The main points of contention were the absence of any fossilized remains of the supposed predator, the speculative nature of the bone arrangement interpretations, and the lack of direct evidence linking the bone configurations to the actions of a large cephalopod. Critics argued that geological and taphonomic processes could explain the ichthyosaur bones' arrangement without invoking an unknown giant cephalopod. Sediment displacement, water currents, and other post-mortem factors might also rearrange bones in various patterns that don't necessarily imply deliberate action by a predator. Guericke's unicorn. Guericke's unicorn refers to a fossil assembled and interpreted by Otto von Guericke, a 17th century German scientist and inventor known for his pioneering work with vacuums and atmospheric pressure. Guericke also had an interest in fossils and natural curiosities, and he was among the first to attempt interpretations of fossils not as anomalies or magical objects, but as remains of the past. In the 1660s, Guericke assembled a skull that he believed belonged to a unicorn. This skull, however, was not from a mythical creature, but was instead composed of fossilized bones from a woolly rhinoceros and a mammoth, both prehistoric animals that once roamed Europe. Guericke's unicorn was not an attempt at deception, but rather a genuine effort to make sense of the puzzling fossil remains found in his time, during an era when the concept of extinction and the true nature of fossils were not yet understood. The unicorn skull was an interpretation based on the available knowledge and the prevailing belief in the existence of mythical creatures like unicorns. Guericke, like many of his contemporaries, tried to fit his findings within the framework of known natural history, which at the time included mythical accounts. It's an example of how early naturalists struggled to reconcile folklore with emerging evidence of past life forms, leading to some unique and often incorrect conclusions about the nature of fossils. Sprawling sauropods. The idea of sprawling sauropods, meaning sauropods that walked with their legs splayed out to size like a lizard, is a misconception based on outdated views of dinosaur posture and locomotion. Early interpretations of dinosaurs often portrayed them as lizard-like, with sprawling limbs because of their classification as reptiles. This view persisted into the early 20th century, influenced by comparisons to modern reptiles like lizards and crocodiles, which typically have a sprawling gait. However, as paleontological techniques advanced and more complete fossil skeletons were discovered and analyzed, it became clear that sauropods, like all dinosaurs, had an upright columnar limb posture rather than a sprawling one. This posture is evident from the vertical orientation of the limb bones in fossilized skeletons and the structure of the hip and shoulder joints, which align the legs under the body. Sauropods were a diverse group of large-bodied, long-necked dinosaurs that include some of the largest animals to have ever walked on land, such as Brachiosaurus, Diplodocus, and Apatosaurus. These dinosaurs had long, strong legs that supported their massive bodies like pillars. The upright limb posture allowed sauropods to support their enormous weight more efficiently than a sprawling posture would have. It also facilitated their movement, enabling them to walk with a more energy-efficient gait suitable for their size. The columnar limb arrangement not only provides strength and support, but also minimizes the energy expenditure required for movement, an essential adaptation for animals of such colossal size. The joints and musculature associated with this posture suggest that sauropods were adapted for walking considerable distances, possibly to forage for the vast amounts of vegetation they needed to sustain themselves. Semi-aquatic Ceratosaurus. Ceratosaurus, a carnivorous theropod dinosaur that lived during the late Jurassic period, is known from various fossils found in North America and possibly Portugal. Characterized by a distinctive horn on its snout and robust body, Ceratosaurus has sparked a lot of discussions regarding its ecological role, including the possibility of it having semi-aquatic behaviors. The original Ceratosaurus specimen, discovered in Colorado's Garden Park, was found in a formation associated with ancient rivers and lakes, suggesting a habitat that included substantial water bodies. This environment could potentially support a semi-aquatic lifestyle, similar to that of some modern predators that utilize both land and water ecosystems to hunt various prey. Ceratosaurus's anatomical features, such as deep jaws with long, blade-like teeth, might have been advantageous for catching slippery, aquatic prey like fish. This speculation is partly based on the comparison with modern semi-aquatic animals and the fact that Ceratosaurus shared its habitat with other large theropods, suggesting niche differentiation to reduce competition. One theory proposes that Ceratosaurus might have specialized in hunting aquatic prey or scavenging near water sources, exploring a niche different from its contemporaries like Allosaurus and Torvosaurus, which might primarily hunted terrestrial prey. The presence of Ceratosaurus in both terrestrial and potentially near aquatic environments indicates its adaptability and ecological versatility. However, direct evidence confirming a semi-aquatic lifestyle, such as isotopic analysis indicating a diet of aquatic organisms, is lacking. Therefore, while it's possible that Ceratosaurus had some semi-aquatic behaviors, this remains a hypothesis that requires further fossil evidence and detailed study to be confirmed. Putting tails on chickens. The concept of putting tails on chickens refers to a scientific and experimental approach to understanding the evolutionary link between dinosaurs and birds, particularly in studying how certain dinosaur traits can be re-expressed in modern birds. This research is part of a broader field called EvoDevo, meaning evolutionary developmental biology, which explores how changes in developmental processes lead to the diverse forms of life observed through history. One of the most notable projects in this area is led by renowned paleontologist Jack Horner, who has proposed the idea of creating a chickenosaurus, a chicken that exhibits certain characteristics of its dinosaur ancestors. This project involved genetically engineering chickens to express dormant genes, or deactivate certain modern genes to bring out ancestral traits, including long, reptilian tails, teeth, and hands with claws instead of wings. The rationale behind these experiments is not to create a spectacle, but to better understand the genetic and developmental pathways that have changed over millions of years from the age of dinosaurs to modern birds. By attempting to reverse engineer a chicken to exhibit dinosaur-like features, scientists can gain insights into the molecular mechanisms behind those features and how they were lost or modified in the evolutionary lineage leading to modern birds. And the tail dinosaurs played many critical roles, including balance, communication, and mating displays. Modern birds have a very short tail made up of a few fused vertebrae called a pygostyle, which supports the tail feathers crucial for flight. By reactivating genes that extend the tail vertebrae, researchers hope to learn more about the structure and function of dinosaur tails and the evolutionary pressures that led to their reduction in modern birds. These studies could also offer broader insights into evolutionary biology, such as how complex traits evolve, disappear, and can be re-evoked through changes in genetic regulation. However, the work is complex and raises ethical, practical, and ecological considerations about genetic manipulation and the welfare of genetically altered organisms. The scientific community continues to debate these aspects, ensuring that such experiments are conducted responsibly. Synapsids with fur. Synapsids are a group of animals that include mammals and their extinct relatives. The evolution of fur in synapsids is a significant aspect of their transition from reptile-like creatures to mammals. Fur is essentially an adaptation primarily associated with maintaining body temperature, providing insulation that helps the body conserve heat. The earliest synapsids, known as pelycosaurs, which lived during the late Carboniferous and early Permian periods, likely did not have fur. These creatures had a more reptilian appearance with scales rather than fur. Over time, as synapsids evolved into more advanced forms, known as therapsids, changes in their skin covering likely occurred. Therapsids, which emerged in the Permian period, are more closely related to modern mammals and are thought to have developed features that are more characteristic of mammals, such as differentiated teeth and possibly warm-blooded metabolism. Among therapsids, a subgroup called cynodonts, which appeared during the late Permian and thrived into the Triassic, is particularly important in the evolution of mammals. It's within the cynodonts that we see the probable development of fur. While direct fossil evidence of fur is scarce due to the difficulty of preserving such soft tissues, certain cynodont fossils show signs of having had a hairy or fur-like covering. This evidence includes the discovery of preserved skin impressions that suggest a coat of hair and the morphological adaptations that imply a warm-blooded metabolism, which is more efficient with an insulating layer like fur. The presence of whiskers, another key feature associated with mammals and their direct ancestors, also supports the idea that these early synapsids had fur. Whiskers are sensory hairs that are typically rooted in a highly innervated follicle rich in sensories. Fur likely provided these early synapsids with several evolutionary advantages, such as better thermoregulation, which would have allowed them to be active during cooler temperatures and at night, possibly leading to a more successful predation and avoidance of predators. This adaptation would have also supported a higher metabolic rate, which is associated with more active and energy-demanding lifestyles. Stegosaurus genitalia. Studying dinosaur reproduction, mainly for species like Stegosaurus, presents significant challenges due to the fossil record's limitation. Soft tissues, especially delicate structures such as genitalia, rarely fossilize, leaving much about dinosaur reproductive methods and anatomy unknown. However, we can infer some aspects based on comparative anatomy with living relatives of dinosaurs, birds, and crocodilians. Both these groups have a single external opening that serves for reproduction, excretion, and urination. It's highly likely that Stegosaurus and other dinosaurs had a similar structure. This organ is multifunctional, aiding in mating, laying eggs, and expelling waste. Considering the physical structure of Stegosaurus with its large plated back and spiked tail, mating would have required specific positioning to avoid injury. The exact mating posture of Stegosaurus though is not known, but it's speculated that like many other reptiles and birds, males would have approached from behind, aligning at an angle to mount the female without harming either party. The process likely involved the male extending his reproductive organ to transfer sperm to the female. Given the size and structure of Stegosaurus, including its heavy armored plates and tail spikes, reproductive behaviors such as mating dances or combat between males might have been complex and ritualistic to avoid injuries. So yeah, basically, while direct evidence such as fossilized reproductive organs for Stegosaurus doesn't exist, studies of body structure and comparisons with modern analogs help paleontologists hypothesize about the reproductive biology. Bat transitional fossils. The evolution of bats, the only mammals capable of sustained flight, is interesting because of the significant morphological changes required for flight. However, the thing is, bat fossils are rare because their fragile skeletons don't preserve well, which makes tracing their evolutionary history challenging. Among the earliest and most important transitional fossils that provide insights into bat evolution are Onychodonectores and Archaeopteropus. These fossils bridge the gap between earlier non-flying mammals and modern bats, showing stages in the development of flight and echolocation. Onychodonectores finneni, discovered in the Green River Formation in Wyoming, USA, dates back to the Eocene epoch, about 52.5 million years ago. This fossil is mainly important because it possesses features of both non-flying mammals and modern bats. It had claws on all 5 of its fingers, unlike modern bats, which typically have claws only on 2 digits. Its limb proportions also suggested that it was capable of flight, but likely not as efficiently as later bats. This suggests that flight evolved before echolocation, as there's no evidence that Onychodonectores had the ear morphology necessary for echolocation. Icaro-Onychodonectores index, also from the Eocene of North America, shows more advanced flight adaptations than the other, but still retains some primitive traits, such as a relatively broad wing attached along the flanks and legs, indicating a style of flight that was likely less agile than that of modern birds. Archaeopteropus, from the slightly later Eocene deposits in Europe, represents a further step towards modern bats. It displays adaptations both in the skeletal and likely in soft tissue structures that suggest more advanced flight capabilities and possibly the early development of echolocation. These fossils collectively illustrate the gradual evolution of flight and sensory adaptation in bats, highlighting the incremental nature of evolutionary change. They show changes in limb structure and function that would eventually allow for the highly maneuverable flight seen in today's bats, alongside the development of sophisticated sensory systems for navigating their environment. Marsupial pterosaurs. The concept of marsupial pterosaurs can be traced back to a historical error made by Edward Newman in 1843. Newman, an English entomologist, misinterpreted the reproductive anatomy of pterosaurs, suggesting that they are marsupial-like creatures. This idea stemmed from his broader work on various aspects of natural history, where he occasionally ventured into speculative interpretations based on the limited fossil evidence available at the time. Newman's mistake was understandable given the early stage of paleontological science during the mid-19th century. At that time, the distinctions between different groups of animals were not as clearly understood, and the fossil record was far less complete than it is today. Newman, like many naturalists of his era, was working with fragmented information and sometimes drew parallels that we now know to be incorrect. In his writings, Newman suggested that pterosaurs might have reared their young in a pouch, similar to marsupials. This assumption was likely influenced by the known marsupials of his time, such as kangaroos and opossums, which visibly carried and nurtured their young in a protective abdominal pouch. Applying the marsupial model to pterosaurs was a creative leap that reflected the tendency of 19th century scientists to fill in gaps in fossil evidence with familiar analogs from modern animals. However, modern paleontology has clarified that pterosaurs were reptiles, not mammals, and the reproductive strategies were quite different from those of marsupials. The discovery of pterosaur eggs and embryos, mainly well-preserved specimens in China, has indeed confirmed that pterosaurs laid eggs. These findings, along with studies of bone development in pterosaur juveniles, suggest that pterosaurs did not have marsupial-like reproductive systems. Instead, they laid eggs that hatched outside the mother's body. Brian J. Ford's sex legs. Brian J. Ford is a scientist known for his work in microscopy and his popular science writing. He introduced a controversial and unconventional hypothesis about the behavior of dinosaurs, mainly about how large sauropod dinosaurs like Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus might have reproduced. Ford suggested that due to their enormous size and weight, these dinosaurs would have faced significant physical challenges during mating on land. To address this issue, he proposed that sauropods might have used bodies of water, what he referred to as sex legs, to support their weight during mating. According to Ford's hypothesis, that buoyancy provided by water would have helped alleviate the physical stress on the bones and joints of these massive creatures, making the mating process more feasible. He speculated that just as modern whales mate in water to support their considerable bulk, sauropods might have similarly used lakes or large rivers to support their weight while mating. This idea, though, has been met with skepticism and criticism from the paleontological community. Many experts argue that there's no direct fossil evidence to support the existence of such behavior, and that the anatomical and physiological adaptations of sauropods don't necessarily indicate a semi-aquatic lifestyle that would support such a mating strategy. Critics also point out that the footprints and other trace fossils of sauropods are predominantly found in terrestrial environments, which suggests that these dinosaurs lived and mated on land. Also, the logistical challenges of large dinosaurs entering and exiting lakes, as well as their ability to manage their buoyancy and movements in water, further raise doubts about this theory. Despite these criticisms though, Ford's proposal adds to the diversity of thought regarding dinosaur ecology and behavior. As with many aspects of paleontological science, the lack of direct behavioral evidence means that many theories, including Ford's, remain speculative. Tier 5. The Loropan and bioluminescent pterosaurs. The Loropan is a creature reported in folklore of Papua New Guinea, often described as a flying cryptid with features similar to a pterosaur, such as a beak, wingspan, and a long tail with a diamond-shaped flange at the end. The descriptions and anecdotal accounts have fueled a lot of speculation and pseudoscientific theories that it might be a surviving species of pterosaur, mainly appealing to proponents of cryptozoology and young Earth creationism. One of the more fantastical elements associated with Loropan lore is the claim that it exhibits bioluminescence, emitting light from its body. Proponents of the Loropan's existence often interpret this bioluminescence as an evolutionary trait that helps the creature navigate, attract mates, or lure prey at night. The Loropan is said to emit a significant glow, which some suggest could be a form of chemiluminescence, light produced by a chemical reaction within an organism. However, the concept of bioluminescent pterosaurs, including the Loropan, lacks empirical support and is not recognized by mainstream science. Bioluminescence in living organisms is also found primarily in marine species and is rare in terrestrial vertebrates, with a few exceptions like the New Zealand glowworm and certain types of fungi. The physiological mechanisms necessary for bioluminescence involve specific chemicals like luciferin and luciferase, which have never been found or identified in any known pterosaur fossils. Extinction by cataracts. The extinction by cataracts theory is a relatively obscure and highly speculative hypothesis that suggests dinosaurs might have gone extinct due to widespread blindness caused by cataracts. This theory suggests that increased radiation from either heightened solar activity or a supernova explosion could have led to a dramatic rise in cataracts among dinosaur populations, significantly impairing their ability to see, find food, avoid predators, and reproduce, eventually leading to their extinction. This theory is one of the many that have been proposed over the years to explain the sudden disappearance of dinosaurs at the end of the Cretaceous period. The most widely accepted theory is, as you know, a massive asteroid impact combined with significant volcanic activity which created a nuclear winter-like effect. But yeah, the cataracts hypothesis, however, lacks empirical support and is not taken seriously in the scientific community. It falls more into the category of fringe theories due to several major flaws, being there's no direct fossil evidence indicating widespread blindness or eye diseases in dinosaur populations. The levels of radiation needed to cause cataracts across such a large and diverse group of animals would have also likely had other severe biological effects which are not evident in the fossil record. And this theory does not account for why only dinosaurs would have been affected by this increase in radiation. Many other species, including reptiles, amphibians, birds, and mammals, would have also been susceptible to increased radiation, but did not suffer mass extinctions. While radiation can cause cataracts, the idea that it could do so uniformly across a vast and diverse group of animals to the extent of causing their extinction is highly implausible. So yeah, basically, the extinction by cataracts theory doesn't really hold up against the asteroid impact hypothesis. Trunk sauropods. The idea of trunk sauropods is a speculative concept in paleontology that suggests some sauropod dinosaurs, such as those in the Diplosidae family, might have possessed a proboscis or trunk similar to modern elephants. This hypothesis considers the anatomical structure of their skulls, mainly the position and size of the nasal openings, which are unusually large and placed far back on the skull. Proponents argue that this can indicate adaptations for a soft tissue structure like a trunk, which would have not preserved in the fossil record. The notion of sauropods with trunks has been proposed to explain how these massive creatures with their long necks and large bodies might have fed more effectively. A trunk could have allowed them to reach vegetation in a more versatile manner than by neck movements alone, especially for low-lying food sources or for manipulating objects. Also, a trunk might have been useful for social interactions, similar to how elephants use their trunks for communication and manipulating their environment. However, the trunk sauropod theory is not widely accepted in the scientific community. Critics point out that the muscular and skeletal adaptations required to support a heavy, muscular trunk are not evident in the fossil remains of sauropods. Elephants, for instance, have a robust skull and a short neck to support the weight and muscular activity of the trunk, traits that sauropods lack. Also, sauropods' teeth and jaws were adapted to a specific method of feeding that involves stripping leaves and might not necessitate or support the use of a trunk. Furthermore, other explanations for the large nasal openings have been proposed, such as housing elaborate respiratory systems or aiding in thermoregulation. These explanations align more closely with known sauropod physiology and don't require the assumption of soft tissues that have no direct fossil evidence. Myanmar blood amber. Myanmar blood amber, also known as Burmese amber, is a highly significant fossil resin that dates back to the Cretaceous period, about 100 million years ago. This amber is renowned for its rich color and exceptional clarity, and most importantly for containing well-preserved remains of flora and fauna from that era. Amber from Myanmar is sourced primarily from the Huang Valley in Kachin State, northern Myanmar. The deposits are among the richest and oldest amber deposits in the world, with some of the most diverse and well-preserved specimens of Cretaceous life. These ambers have been in mine for centuries, and historically, they were treasured in Chinese culture and beyond for their beauty and supposed medicinal properties. The scientific value of Myanmar amber lies in its incredible biodiversity. The amber often encapsulates small organisms such as insects, spiders, scorpions, and even small vertebrates like lizards and birds. These specimens are often preserved in exquisite detail, providing a snapshot of ancient ecosystems and offering insights into the evolution of these species. Researchers have discovered entire new species, genera, and sometimes even families based on the organisms trapped within this amber. The extraction and sale of Myanmar amber have been subjects of ethical controversy though, especially since much of the amber mining occurs in conflict zones involving armed groups. The profits from amber sales have been reported to fuel these conflicts, mainly affecting the Kachin people who live in the region. In addition to the human rights issues, there are also concerns about the scientific practices surrounding the amber trade, ranging from the legality of specimen export to the damage caused by unregulated mining to both cultural heritage sites and the environment. Despite these issues though, the scientific community continues to study specimens that were legally acquired before the escalation of conflicts or through legitimate channels thereafter, under the constraints of international laws and ethical guidelines. These studies are critical as they contribute significantly to our understanding of ancient life and help fill gaps in the fossil record. Crocoduck. The crocoduck is a fictional creature that was popularized by proponents of creationism as an argument against the theory of evolution. The term was basically used to suggest that if evolution were true, there should be fossil records of very distinct and abrupt transitional creatures, such as a crocodile-duck hybrid, demonstrating a mix of features from both species groups. The crocoduck is often brought up in debates as an example of a misunderstanding or a misrepresentation of evolutionary science. Evolutionary biology explains that species evolve through gradual changes over many generations, with natural selection favoring traits that enhance survival and reproductive success in a given environment. Transitional fossils, rather than showing abrupt half-and-half combinations like a crocoduck, display a spectrum of features that illustrate gradual evolutionary processes. For example, the transition from water-dwelling to land-dwelling animals shows a series of gradual adaptations in limb structure, not a sudden appearance of fully formed limbs. The concept of a crocoduck is based on a fundamental misconception of how evolution works. It mistakenly assumes that evolution should lead to the blending of completely different species or the sudden, simultaneous appearance of new anatomical features. In reality though, evolution involves the modification of existing structures and the gradual accumulation of small changes that can, over vast periods, lead to the diversity of life observed today. McLaughlin's Ceratopsians. John McLaughlin's work on ceratopsians, presented in his book Archosauria: A New Look at the Old Dinosaur, is notable for its highly speculative reconstruction of these dinosaurs. McLaughlin proposed that the massive frills of ceratopsians, which are typically characterized by their bony projections and large size, were not just simple display structures but might have had additional muscular attachments extending over the back, radically different from conventional interpretations. McLaughlin's illustrations and hypotheses suggest a much more muscular and robust anatomy for these dinosaurs, extending the jaw musculature across the frill to the rear margin. This idea was part of a broader attempt to rethink dinosaur anatomy and behavior in more dynamic and perhaps mammalian-like terms, differing significantly from the classic view of these reptiles as slower and less active creatures. His interpretations, while interesting and provocative, have not been widely accepted in paleontological circles. Critics argue that the extensive musculature he proposed would likely render the frill and the head nearly immobile, which contradicts evidence of high mobility in the neck and head suggested by the skeletal anatomy of these dinosaurs. Also, the surface texture of the frills, which often include various ornamental and structural features, does not support the extensive coverage of muscle tissue McLaughlin proposed. Archaeoraptor. Archaeoraptor refers to a fossil specimen that gained infamy as a paleontological forgery. Originally presented to the scientific community and the public as a potential missing link between birds and non-avian dinosaurs, the specimen was supposed to represent a feathered dinosaur from the early Cretaceous period of China. It was unveiled in a 1999 issue of the journal National Geographic before it had been peer-reviewed, which later led to significant controversy. The specimen, which was smuggled out of China and into the hands of a private collector before being studied by scientists, was a composite. It was made of parts from different species. The tail and lower body belonged to a dromaeosaurid dinosaur, a group known for its bird-like qualities, including feathers, while the upper body came from a bird, more specifically a primitive bird similar to the Anornis. After the initial excitement, further examination and CT scans revealed that the fossil was a forgery, consisting of glued fragments of at least 2 and possibly more specimens. This revelation was a significant embarrassment for National Geographic and the involved scientists, leading to discussions about the practices of fossil acquisition, especially from regions like Liaoning Province, China, where many significant feathered dinosaur fossils have been found, and the presence of speedy publication without thorough peer review. Chickenosaurus. The concept of Chickenosaurus, which we mentioned before, emerges from an interesting venture into evolutionary biology and genetic engineering, driven by the insights of paleontologist Jack Horner. Horner, who is known for his advisory role in the Jurassic Park movies, advocates for the possibility of reviving certain dinosaurian characteristics in modern chickens through genetic manipulation, a process often referred to as reverse evolution. We touched upon all this before, but basically as a reminder, this scientific endeavor focuses on reactivating dormant genes in chickens, which, despite being inactive due to the course of evolution, remain present in their genomes. These genes are linked to traits that their ancient dinosaur ancestors, the theropods, once exhibited. By manipulating these genes, scientists hope to reproduce physical features typical of dinosaurs in a chicken, effectively creating a Chickenosaurus. Tier 6. Extinction by overactive pituitary glands. The hypothesis of extinction by overactive pituitary glands is a speculative idea that suggests that some dinosaurs could have been driven to extinction due to biological overgrowth, potentially caused by hormonal imbalances linked to the pituitary glands. The pituitary gland, often dubbed the master gland, regulates vital bodily functions through the secretion of hormones that influence growth, metabolism, and reproduction. This theory suggests that if some dinosaurs had pituitary glands that became overactive, it could lead to gigantism or other metabolic complications. Gigantism, resulting from excessive production or growth hormones, could have made these creatures unsuitable in their environments due to increased demands for food and other resources, or due to stress on their physiological systems that could lead to decreased reproductive success and increased vulnerability to diseases and environmental changes. Also, such hormonal imbalances could hypothetically affect not just size but also reproductive rates and behaviors, potentially leading to population declines. For example, if overactive pituitary glands led to an increased growth rate, but shorter lifespan or reduced fertility, this could impact the long-term viability of populations, especially under environmental stresses like changing climates, food scarcity, or competition. However, it's important to note that this idea remains highly speculative with little direct evidence to support it. Most scientifically accepted theories of dinosaur extinction center around catastrophic environmental changes, such as the impact of a massive asteroid combined with volcanic activity, leading to drastic changes in climate and ecosystems. These theories are supported by geological and fossil evidence indicating sudden shifts in the Earth's environment that would have been challenging for many forms of life, including dinosaurs, to survive. Extinction by caterpillars. The hypothesis that caterpillars could have contributed to dinosaur extinctions explores the potential impact of these leaf-eating larvae on the ecosystems of the Mesozoic era. Caterpillars, which are a juvenile form of butterflies and moths, are known for their ability to consume vast amounts of foliage. In modern ecosystems, severe caterpillar infestations can lead to significant defoliation, which can drastically affect the availability of resources for herbivorous animals. If similar events occurred during the time of the dinosaurs, it's conceivable that large-scale defoliation could have depleted the food sources for herbivorous dinosaurs. These dinosaurs typically required massive quantities of vegetation to sustain themselves, and any significant reduction in plant life could have led to nutritional deficiencies, reduced reproductive success, and increased vulnerability to disease and predation. Also, the loss of vegetation would not only affect the herbivores directly, but could also disrupt the entire ecosystem. Plants are basically the foundation of the food web, and their reduction would have impacted various trophic levels, including carnivorous dinosaurs that relied on herbivores for food. While this theory is highly speculative and not widely supported by direct fossil evidence, it serves as a thought-provoking example of how interdependent life forms are and how changes in one group can have ripple effects throughout an ecosystem. Paleobiology. Paleobiology is a mysterious trace fossil found primarily in marine sedimentary rocks, dating from the late Precambrian up to present. These fossils present a strikingly regular knot-like pattern, often appearing as a honeycomb or hexagonal cells, although the shape can vary, with some showing more rectangular or irregular meshes. And the size of these patterns can range from a few millimeters to several centimeters across. The origin and creator of Paleobiology, though, remain a subject of debate and speculation among paleontologists. It's suggested that these patterns might be the burrows or nests of an unknown type of marine organism, potentially for feeding, dwelling, or breeding purposes. The precise nature of the creature that might have created these structures is still unknown, leading to various hypotheses, including the possibility of them being produced by worms or other burrowing marine animals. Paleobiology has been found in various locations around the world too, notably in the deep-sea floor muds of the Atlantic Ocean, which has added to the mystery, as modern equivalents of these structures have been observed in the seabed, but the organisms responsible have not been caught in the act of creating them. Fire-breathing Parasaurolophus. The idea of fire-breathing dinosaurs, particularly a fire-breathing Parasaurolophus, is a vivid and imaginative concept popularized by Duane T. Gish in his books such as Dinosaurs by Design and Dinosaurs Those Terrible Lizards. This notion, while interesting and engaging in the realm of speculative biology, lacks scientific evidence and has been repeatedly debunked by experts in the field. The concept is part of a broader series of claims by some young Earth creationists who propose that humans and dinosaurs coexisted and that some dinosaurs had the ability to breathe fire, much like the dragons of myth and legend. These ideas are critically examined in Philip J. Center's book, Fire-Breathing Dinosaurs: The Hilarious History of Creationist Pseudoscience at its Silliest. Center, a professor of zoology, delves into the young Earth creationist perspective, which attempts to integrate dinosaurs into the narrative of human history, contrary to the overwhelming geological and paleontological evidence suggesting that dinosaurs became extinct millions of years before humans appeared. In his book, Center explores the physical and biological implausibility of fire-breathing mechanisms in dinosaurs, pointing out the anatomical and physiological challenges such a trait would entail. The analysis includes a detailed look at the fossil record, which shows no evidence supporting the existence of any fire-breathing mechanisms in Parasaurolophus or any other dinosaur. The book also addresses the broader context of how such myths and misconceptions about dinosaurs have been perpetuated in certain circles despite their scientific inaccuracies. Dinosaurs with pinnae. The idea of dinosaurs having pinnae, the external part of the ears, is quite speculative and not supported by direct fossil evidence. Dinosaurs, like other reptiles, likely didn't have external ear flaps like mammals do. Instead, they would have had ear openings that were more similar to those of modern reptiles, where the ear hole is visible but not accentuated by external structure. In reptiles today, the lack of a pinna involves for a streamlined shape that is beneficial for various reasons, such as reducing the risk of injury during movement through vegetation or when engaging in physical confrontations. This might have been true for dinosaurs as well, particularly for the more active or large-bodied species where having protruding external ears could have been a disadvantage. The closest relatives of dinosaurs, birds and crocodilians, also lack pinnae. Birds have feathered heads which cover the area where pinnae would be, and they rely on slightly different structures for sound localization. Crocodiles have simple flaps that cover their ears when underwater. The similarity amongst such closely related groups suggests that dinosaurs would have had a similar arrangement, lacking pinnae but possessing functional internal ear structures capable of detecting sound. Dinosaurs and humans coexisted. The theory that human ancestors coexisted with dinosaurs is based on a misinterpretation or misrepresentation of scientific evidence. According to established scientific consensus, non-avian dinosaurs went extinct about 66 million years ago, and human ancestors, on the other hand, didn't appear until millions of years later. The earliest hominins are dated to about 6 to 7 million years ago, long after the dinosaurs had disappeared. The idea of any overlap between non-avian dinosaurs and human ancestors lacks support in the fossil records. But I did want to add that there's an article from NDTV suggesting a new study published in the journal Current Biology that claims that early mammals, including human ancestors, coexisted with dinosaurs for a brief period before the dinosaurs went extinct. This study focuses more on the fossil record of placental mammals and uses this data to estimate the evolution and diversification of these species. The researchers, including Emery Carlsson from the University of Bristol and Danielle Silvestro from the University of Fribourg, conducted an in-depth analysis of thousands of fossils to determine the patterns of origination and extinction among different mammalian groups. They found that certain mammalian families such as primates, Lagomorpha, and Carnivora evolved just before the mass extinction event that marked the end of the Cretaceous period. This finding suggests that these early mammals coexisted with dinosaurs and survived the mass extinction caused by an asteroid impact 66 million years ago. Dinosaur denial. Dinosaur denialism is a phenomenon rooted in a friend subset of the fundamentalist young Earth creationist movement. This group contends that prehistoric dinosaurs are a fabrication of the 19th century, a notion not well informed enough to include birds in their definition of dinosaurs. They argue that the existence of dinosaurs is a conspiracy supported by pseudo-paleontological claims, which often intersect with broader evolution denialism. The belief that dinosaurs never existed stems more from ideological positions, a dislike of evolutionary theory, and moral perceptions rather than scientific evidence. The creationists argue that teaching children about dinosaurs is harmful, claiming it sets a bad example and promotes falsehoods. An often cited reason for this skepticism is the relatively recent discovery of dinosaurs, which were unknown before the 1800s and supposedly concocted by curio-hungry Victorians. Critics of dinosaur existence often suggest that dinosaur bones are fabrications, proposing that the bones displayed in museums are either altered or completely manufactured from different materials like plaster. They claim that if real, dinosaur bones should have decayed into soil over millions of years, contradicting their presence in the fossil record. Another aspect of dinosaur denial focuses on the impossibility of their size, arguing that such large animals could not manage their body heat effectively, thus could not have survived. Despite the extensive fossil records and scientific studies that have identified hundreds of dinosaur species through various forms of evidence, such as bones, footprints, and coprolites, dinosaur denialists still maintain their stance. They argue that the promotion of dinosaurs is a tactic by the scientific community to undermine religious scriptures, which do not mention these creatures. Typhlosis. Typhlosis is an interesting and somewhat mysterious fossil organism from the late Devonian period, about 380 million years ago. Its fossils have primarily been found in the famous Posidonia shell in Germany, which is known for its excellent preservation of marine life from the time. The exact nature of this fossil, though, has puzzled paleontologists since it was first described. The creature's body was soft-bodied, about a few centimeters long, and its overall morphology does not clearly resemble any living organism today. Its body shape is somewhat torpedo-like, with a conical front and a rounded back, which has led to various interpretations about its lifestyle and classification. One of the most distinctive features of the fossil is a pair of internal structures that have been interpreted as possible digestive glands, though their exact function remains a subject of debate. Also, there's evidence suggesting the presence of a unique dark-colored organ which might have been used for digestion or perhaps even as a defensive ink sac similar to those found in modern cephalopods. Given these features, some hypotheses suggest that the fossil might have been a ectobenthic predator or scavenger living near the seafloor and possibly preying on small marine organisms or scavenging dead material. However, without more clear fossil evidence, its place in the tree of life and its ecological role remains speculative. Paluxy River Tracks. The Paluxy River Tracks are a significant set of fossilized footprints found in the bed of the Paluxy River near Glen Rose, Texas. These tracks have garnered a lot of attention due to their controversial nature and the implications that they might hold for the relationship between humans and dinosaurs. The tracks primarily date back to the Cretaceous period, about 110 million years ago. The site is well known for containing numerous well-preserved dinosaur tracks, predominantly those of theropod and sauropod dinosaurs. These tracks are located in what is now Dinosaur Valley State Park, which allows visitors to view the footprints during periods of low water. The controversy arises from the claims made in the early 20th century that some of the tracks are of human origin, allegedly existing alongside those of dinosaurs. This assertion was used by some to support creationist views, arguing against the scientific consensus of the geological timeline and evolutionary theory, which states that humans and non-avian dinosaurs did not coexist. Extensive scientific analysis, however, has shown that the so-called human tracks are misinterpreted or misidentified marks within the rocks. In some cases, these have been shown to be eroded dinosaur tracks or the result of natural geological processes. Also, some of the purportedly human tracks were later revealed to have been altered or even fabricated to appear more human-like. Dragons equal dinosaurs. The notion that dinosaurs and dragons are linked is a fascinating area of both folklore and scientific speculation. Throughout history, virtually every civilization has had myths involving creatures that resemble modern representations of dragons, being massive, fearsome beasts often capable of flying and breathing fire. These myths are deeply embedded in human cultures across the globe, from the dragons of European lore to the long of Chinese mythology. One popular theory among enthusiasts and some scholars is that these dragon myths could have been inspired by the discovery of dinosaur fossils. Ancient peoples, stumbling upon the bones of dinosaurs, might have tried to make sense of these remnants by connecting them with their experiences or the natural world as they understood it. For example, the large bones could have been interpreted as remains of dragons, leading to a blend of empirical observation and mythological embellishment over generations. Also, the physical features attributed to dragons in myths, such as the scaly body of a reptile, the fearsome teeth and claws, and the often serpentine form, can also be seen in various dinosaur fossils. This visual correlation might have led ancient civilizations to conceive of dragons as real creatures that once roamed the earth, their legends fueled by the actual sight of dinosaur bones. In modern times, the intersection of paleontology and cultural mythology offers a playful yet interesting angle to scientific nomenclature. For instance, dinosaurs with names like Dracorex and Golong, which means Dragon King in Mandarin, reflect a merging of scientific discovery and the enduring appeal of dragon myths. So yeah, while no evidence supports the idea that stories of dragons derive from human interactions with living dinosaurs, since non-avian dinosaurs became extinct long before humans appeared, the resemblance between dragons and dinosaurs in various cultural depictions suggests that discoveries of ancient bones likely played a role in the development of these myths. Mokele Mbembe. Mokele Mbembe, often described in various Bantu mythologies as a water-dwelling entity, continues to fascinate cryptozoologists and enthusiasts of prehistoric life. Believed to inhabit the Congo River basin, this creature is depicted as a large quadrupedal herbivore with smooth skin, a long neck, and a single tooth or horn, drawing strong comparisons to the extinct sauropods. The creature first entered Western consciousness through reports by German captain Ludwig Freyr during his 1913 survey in what is now Cameroon. Despite the fantastical nature of these reports, von Stein considered the accounts credible enough to include in his official report, based on consistent descriptions from various independent sources. The description included the creature's alleged vegetarian diet and its aggressive behavior towards canoes. Throughout the 20th century, Mokele Mbembe became the subject of interest not only for cryptozoologists but also for young Earth creationists who saw potential in the creature to challenge the scientific consensus on evolution. Several expeditions were launched, fueled by both scientific curiosity and a desire for validation, though none could conclusively prove the creature's existence. The mainstream scientific community remained skeptical about Mokele Mbembe, largely attributing the legend to misidentified sightings of known animals such as the black rhinoceros. This skepticism is bolstered by the lack of physical evidence despite numerous well-funded searches. Historical analysis suggests that the myth might have evolved from encounters with real animals or from the discovery of dinosaur fossils, which were then added into local folklore, possibly influenced by cultural transmission and the human propensity to mythologize the natural world. unfossilized dinosaur bones and tissues. The discovery of what appeared to be unfossilized dinosaur bones and tissues by paleontologist Mary Schweitzer offers a profound shift in our understanding of fossilization and what can be preserved in the fossil record. Her findings include flexible blood vessels and structures resembling cells within the femur of a T-Rex, estimated to be 6 to 8 million years old. This T-Rex was uncovered in Montana, and through careful laboratory procedures involving this demineralization of bone samples and acid, Schweitzer's team managed to reveal soft tissues hidden within the fossilized bone. This astonishing find initially sparked significant attention not only for its scientific implications, but also for the controversies it stirred among young Earth creationists, who used the discovery to argue against the long-established timelines of paleontology and evolutionary biology. These groups claimed that such tissues could not possibly survive millions of years, hence supporting their view of a much younger age of the Earth. Contrary to these claims though, Schweitzer's research, which continues to explore the properties and preservation of these tissues, does not support the young Earth paradigm. Instead, it highlights unusual conditions of preservation that have allowed soft tissue to survive longer than expected under specific circumstances. The presence of medullary bone within the T-Rex femur, indicating that the dinosaur was pregnant, adds another layer of biological insight, suggesting rapid burial and mineralization post-mortem could help preserve such tissues. These findings have broad implications, potentially affecting our understanding of dinosaur physiology and the conditions under which biological materials can fossilize. More importantly though, it opens up new avenues for paleontological research, moving beyond traditional bone studies to include the examination of ancient biomolecules like proteins, which could offer deeper insights into the evolutionary links between dinosaurs and modern birds. The ongoing debate continues to evolve as Schweitzer and other scientists further investigate the chemical stability and preservation of ancient proteins, which could one day even influence the search for life on other planets. Ica stones. The Ica stones are a collection of andesite stones found in Ica province, Peru. They are controversial because they bear etchings, many of which are dinosaurs and other possible scenes for the time period in which they were supposedly created. These stories have sparked a lot of debate because they depict a variety of detailed scenes such as complex surgeries, star constellations, and various types of dinosaurs, which suggest knowledge of these creatures before their scientific discovery. The stones first gained wider attention in the 1960s when Dr. Javier Cabrera, a Peruvian doctor, began collecting and studying them. Cabrera promoted the idea that the stones were ancient based on the purported discovery of such stones by a farmer named Basilio Uchaya. Uchaya later confessed to carving the stones himself though and fabricating their prehistoric origins as a means to sell them to tourists and collectors. Despite Uchuya's admission, some proponents continued to argue that the stones are genuine artifacts from a lost ancient civilization that had coexisted with dinosaurs and possessed advanced technology. This claim aligns with certain fringe theories outside mainstream archaeology and is often cited in discussions involving ancient astronauts and lost technology. Mainstream scientists and archaeologists though dismiss the Ica stones as hoaxes, citing the lack of any credible evidence of their supposed ancient origin. The artistic styles and depictions don't correspond with any known pre-Columbian culture, and the stones themselves are not accompanied by any verifiable context or archaeological stratigraphy that could authenticate a genuine prehistoric origin. Tier 7. Dinosaur Petroglyphs. In northeast Brazil, the Serra do Leiteiro site presents a significant convergence of paleontological and archaeological elements. This site includes rock outcrops that showcase both dinosaur footprints and indigenous petroglyphs. The geological formation at this site, dating back to the early Cretaceous period, contains well-preserved footprints of theropod, sauropod, and orthopod dinosaurs. Adjacent to these prehistoric tracks are petroglyphs, primarily consisting of circular motifs with radial lines, similar in style to other carvings found across the states of Paraíba and Rio Grande do Norte. The study of this site focuses on understanding the relationship between these dinosaur tracks and the petroglyphs. This involves analyzing how these ancient artworks have weathered over time and considering their cultural significance and implications for both archaeology and paleontology. The site's remote location, along with its archaeological and paleontological significance, highlights its potential for broader cultural heritage studies. It suggests that the creators of the petroglyphs were aware of the dinosaur tracks, potentially incorporating this ancient knowledge into their cultural expressions. Pigeon foot feather genes. The phenomenon of feather feet in pigeons is a fascinating instance of morphological novelty that can be linked to bizarre features seen in extinct organisms, showing how genetic variations can manifest as physical traits over evolutionary timescales. In pigeons, feathered feet arise from the altered expression of certain key limb identity genes named PITX1 and CBX5. These genes are part of a highly conserved genetic toolkit responsible for limb development across amniotes, which includes reptiles, birds, and mammals. Normally, PITX1 is expressed in the hind limbs and helps define their identity, distinguishing them from forelimbs. In some breeds of pigeons though, mutations in regulatory regions of this gene and TBX5 lead to a shift in their expression patterns during development. This results in the hind limbs partially assuming characteristics typical of forelimbs, in this case feathers instead of scales. The modified expression of PITX1 and TBX5 influences downstream genes that contribute to limb development, thereby changing the external morphology from scales to feathers. This genetic mechanism has parallels in paleobiology, where dramatic shifts in the appearance of organisms over time often puzzled scientists. For instance, the evolution of theropod dinosaurs into birds involved significant morphological changes, such as the development of feathers for flight, which were driven by genetic modifications over millions of years. Similarly, in pigeons, we see a contemporary example of how small genetic tweaks can lead to significant morphological diversity, such as feathered feet, a trait that might seem minor but illustrates the principles of evolutionary change and diversification. Kongamado. The Kongamado is a mysterious creature reportedly seen in the tropical and subtropical regions of Africa, notably in Zambia, the Congo, and Angola. Described as a creature with features similar to pterosaurs, the Kongamado has a notable reputation in local folklore as a breaker of boats, known for capsizing canoes and attacking those who come too close to rivers. Physically, the Kongamado is said to resemble a large, rich lizard with a wingspan ranging from 4 to 100 feet. It possesses membranous wings and a beak filled with teeth. When locals were shown images of pterosaurs, many identified these as representations of the Kongamado, suggesting a visual similarity between the cryptid and these prehistoric flying reptiles. The lore surrounding the Kongamado also includes its diet, which is primarily fish, though there are tales of it consuming humans and disturbing graves to steal corpses. This behavior could be attributed to the shallow burial practices common in some African cultures. Interestingly, despite being in a region frequented by birdwatchers, Kongamado sightings are rare among these groups. This has led to speculation that the Kongamado sightings may be cases of mistaken identity, perhaps involving known wildlife or misinterpreted experiences under distress. Bronjor. The Bronjor, also known as Bonancer, is an Australian cryptid that echoes the appearance and characteristics of a theropod dinosaur, similar to T-Rex. This creature is thought to possibly be a descendant of megaraptorids like the Megaraptor, or even a species not yet identified in the fossil record. According to Aboriginal mythology, the Bronjor is a giant lizard, measuring about 20 to 25 feet in length with small clawed hands and a bipedal stance. During the 1950s, it was often reported by cattle ranchers in Australia who found large bipedal tracks and suspected the creature of preying on their livestock. Aboriginal accounts also describe it as a reptilian animal, possibly feathered, that primarily fed on kangaroos and other large animals. The most recent documented sighting of the Bronjor was in 1985 when a family traveling near Roper River reported seeing a 20-foot long feathered creature. Another notable encounter was in 1978 when a man named Brian Clark went missing in the woods. During the search, policemen and Aboriginal bushmen were awakened by a large thunderous sound and shaking ground, which they later associated with the Bronjor, though they noted that a real theropod would not make such a racket, contrary to cinematic portrayals. Despite these intriguing sightings though, there have been no confirmed encounters for over 30 years, and no physical remains of the creature have been discovered, leading some to speculate that if the Bronjor did exist, it might now be extinct. This cryptid has also become a point of interest among proponents of young Earth creationism, who use this story as evidence for their views on the age of the Earth and the coexistence of humans and dinosaurs. Ornithocelida. Ornithocelida is a term that has roots in the early classification of dinosaurs. It was originally proposed by Thomas Henry Huxley in 1870. Huxley used this term to describe a group of dinosaurs that he believed were closely related due to their shared bird-like characteristics in their pelvic structure and hind limbs. The name itself combines the Greek words ornithos, meaning bird, and solida, meaning leg, reflecting these similarities. Huxley's classification grouped together various dinosaurs that are now typically included in two major groups, the Ornithischia and the Theropoda. Ornithischia includes herbivorous dinosaurs like Stegosaurus and Triceratops, while Theropoda includes carnivorous dinosaurs like T-Rex and Velociraptor, many of which share similar limb structures to birds. However, Huxley's Ornithocelida did not endure as a classification in the long term. As paleontologists learned more about dinosaur anatomy and evolutionary relationships, they largely abandoned Ornithocelida in terms of other classifications. Interestingly, a revival of the term was proposed in a 2017 study by Matthew Burron, David Norman, and Paul Barrett. They suggested a radical reorganization of dinosaur relationships, where the traditional groups of Ornithischia and Theropoda would be more closely related to each other than to the sauropodomorphs under a revised concept of Ornithischelida. This proposal remains controversial and is not universally accepted, indicating that the understanding and classification of dinosaur evolutionary relationships continue to be dynamic and subject to change. Now Mosaic of Palestrina. The depiction of creatures that some interpret as dinosaurs in ancient artworks like the Nile Mosaic of Palestrina often sparks discussions about historical perceptions of wildlife and myth. These interpretations, mainly the ones speculating the existence of dinosaurs in the time of humans, stem from a mix of curiosity and the human tendency to connect unfamiliar images with more fantastical elements. In the case of the Nile Mosaic of Palestrina, the dinosaurs some claim to see might actually be artistic representations of known animals like crocodiles, but exaggerated or stylized based on the artist's creativity or limited knowledge. Ancient artists often depicted exotic animals based on secondhand descriptions, which could explain why some creatures in such mosaics appear distorted or unlike any living animal we recognize today. Also, the interpretation of these images as dinosaurs could be influenced by the viewer's expectations and cultural context. Aquatic ape hypothesis. The aquatic ape hypothesis is a speculative theory suggesting that some of the evolutionary adaptations seen in humans can be explained by a period during which our ancestors lived in an aquatic or semi-aquatic environment. This hypothesis is not widely accepted within the scientific community though, as it lacks substantial fossil and genetic evidence to support it. Elaine Morgan popularized the hypothesis in the 1970s as an alternative to the then dominant theories of human evolution, which were primarily based on savanna-dwelling ancestors. The aquatic ape hypothesis points to features such as human bipedalism, lack of body hair, and anatomic fat distribution as traits that could have developed in a water-based environment to aid in swimming and diving. Critics of the hypothesis though argue that the traits cited by the aquatic ape hypothesis proponents can be explained through other evolutionary scenarios. For example, bipedalism might have evolved for energy-efficient walking on the savanna, and the loss of body hair could be an adaptation to heat regulation. Also, similar traits are found in other mammals that have not been aquatic. Nguma monene. Nguma monene is a cryptid reportedly found in the remote and largely unexplored parts of the Congo rainforest. Described as a massive serpentine lizard, its estimated length is between 30 and 50 feet, with a body diameter of 2 to 3 feet. The creature is depicted with a grayish-brown color, a snake-like head and neck, a forked tongue, and a serrated ridge along its spine, and short legs, indicating it could be amphibious. This creature is thought to be related to another cryptid too, Mokele-mbembe, due to their shared descriptions that resemble prehistoric animals and their origin from similar regions. The Nguma monene has been sighted a few times, notably near the Dongo Mataba, a tributary of the Ubangi River. The most significant of these sightings was reported by pastor Joseph Ellis in 1971, who described seeing a long tail that he estimated to be about 32 feet long. The local Lingala language refers to Nguma monene as large boa, which suggests a significant size and possibly intimidating nature. Other variant names include Angode monene and Nyama monene. The cryptid has various interpretations too regarding its existence. Some suggest it might be a living dinosaur, specifically a member of the Spinosauridae family due to its aquatic and terrestrial lifestyle. Others think it could be an unknown species of elongated monitor lizard. However, there's also a possibility that the sightings are exaggerated or misidentified descriptions of known animals like crocodilians or Nile monitors. Roy P. Mackel, a biologist, conducted research and proposed that the creature might be an unknown reptile species based on the descriptions and sightings reported. Mbilu Mbilu Mbilu. The Mbilu 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 is a mysterious cryptid reported from the Likwala River area of the Republic of the Congo. Described primarily through anecdotal evidence, it's most noted for the unusual large planks or dermal plates growing out of its back. This creature has been spotted sporadically, with one notable sighting near Apena at Ikesi, where it was seen emerging from the water. Its body has never been fully described though, and is usually only seen partially submerged, often covered with algae, making precise identification challenging. The cryptid though has sparked some theories about its identity, with some suggesting it could be a living stegosaur inspired by its plate-like structures. This theory was particularly fueled when a local woman identified an image of a stegosaurus as resembling tales she heard from her parents. However, Roy P. Mackel, while intrigued by these accounts, has favored the possibility that it might be a giant monitor lizard with unusual back structures. Further complicating the classification are suggestions that the Mbilu 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 might be related to or the same as other cryptids in the region, like the Nguma monene or the Mokele-mbembe. Some believe it could even be a form of giant crocodilian or new species of aquatic reptile. non-avian Paleocene dinosaurs. The notion that some non-avian dinosaurs may have survived the extinction event into the Paleocene epoch remains a highly speculative and controversial topic within paleontology. Evidence for Paleocene non-avian dinosaurs is sparse and heavily debated. Some findings, like dinosaur remains reported in the Hell Creek Formation slightly above the KPJ boundary, suggest a possible dead-clad walking scenario where dinosaurs persisted for a short period post-extinction event. This term describes a situation where a species or group of organisms continues to exist for a time after a mass extinction event but is ultimately doomed to extinction. One example involves pollen samples found near Hadrosaur femur in the Ojo Alamo sandstone, which indicate that this particular hadrosaur might have lived about 1 million years after the KPJ event. However, many scientists dispute such claims, arguing that these fossils might have been reworked, meaning that they were eroded from the original Cretaceous deposits and then redeposited into younger Paleocene layers. A compelling argument for genuine Paleocene dinosaurs would require the discovery of a complete, or at least associated skeleton found above the KPJ boundary, which has yet to be reported. Until such evidence is found, the prevalent consensus in the scientific community remains that non-avian dinosaurs did not survive past the KPJ boundary, except for lineages that led to modern birds. Tier 8. Humans may have tamed dinosaurs. The idea of humans taming or domesticating dinosaurs is a fascinating topic often explored in science fiction and speculative discussions. Despite the obvious fact that humans and non-avian dinosaurs never coexisted, it's interesting to think what might have been possible under different circumstances. If you imagine a world where humans did coexist with non-avian dinosaurs, the feasibility of taming or domesticating them would depend on several factors like size and behavior. Smaller dinosaurs might have been more manageable, similar to how dogs were domesticated from wolves. On the other hand, larger dinosaurs like T-Rex or sauropods would pose significant challenges due to their size and potential for danger, comparable to the challenges faced in taming elephants today. Dinosaurs that exhibited pack behaviors or had social structures could potentially be more susceptible to domestication efforts, much like horses or elephants. Conversely, solitary and territorial dinosaurs would likely be as difficult to domesticate as modern tigers or bears. The level of intelligence and adaptability of the dinosaur species would also be critical. Animals that can learn and adapt to human presence and commands more readily, like many modern birds or mammals, would stand a better chance of being tamed or domesticated. Nsanga. The Nsanga is a cryptid reported from the Bangweulu wetlands in northeastern Zambia, described as a smooth-skinned aquatic reptile. It was first reported by Lieutenant Frederick Paul Gretz in 1912, who crossed Africa's waterways and heard about the creature from local people. Described it as a degenerate saurian, which could be mistaken for a crocodile if not for its smooth, scaleless skin and clawed digits. Despite not seeing a living Nsanga, Gretz claimed to have acquired some strips of its skin on Mambola Island. Bernard Huelmans, a prominent investigator in the field of cryptozoology, initially speculated that the Nsanga could be a large martel lizard due to its description. However, he later considered that it might be a mammal appearing lizard-like and possibly smooth-skinned from a distance, perhaps even a mythical water lion. This theory led him to conclude that the smooth-skinned crocodile like Nsanga was distinct from the one-horned dragon, Chipekwe, and a waterline, suggesting that there might be 3 different cryptids in the Bangweulu region. George Eberhard and Huelmans also considered that a fully aquatic animal reported by Hans Kronberg from Lake Bangweulu, sometimes also considered a Chipekwe or waterline, might be synonymous with Nsanga. This animal was smaller than a hippopotamus, which it preyed on, and was described to never leave the water, unlike the Chipekwes and waterlines that are amphibious. Another local name for Nsanga in Bangweulu refers to the Goliath tigerfish, known for its crocodile-like teeth and large body with fins and scales, which contrasts with the description of the Nsanga as being smooth-skinned. Aquatic Compsognathus. At one point, there was an interesting hypothesis about a species of Compsognathus named Compsognathus corastralis, which was thought to be an aquatic dinosaur. This idea emerged from the discovery of a specimen in southeastern France in the early 1970s. This specimen, initially considered a new species due to its size and unique features, displayed what appeared to be elongated 3-fingered flippers suggesting adaptations for swimming. This interpretation fit well into the environment of Lake Jurassic Europe, which was a series of islands in a shallow tropical sea where a semi-aquatic lifestyle could have been advantageous for hunting aquatic prey and island hopping. However, this notion of an aquatic Compsognathus didn't hold up for long. Further studies in the late 1970s and early 1980s concluded that the unusual features were misinterpreted, being that the supposed flippers were just distortions and ripples in the fossil slab. The specimen was then reassessed as a fully grown Compsognathus displaying normal hands for the species, and the idea of it having aquatic adaptations was abandoned. Despite this, the concept of aquatic non-avian dinosaurs has been revived in recent years with discoveries like Spinosaurus, which saw more definite adaptations to a water-based lifestyle. Waukesha's butterfly creature. At the Waukesha Biota site, which is a significant fossil location situated in Waukesha County in Franklin, Milwaukee County within the state of Wisconsin, United States, is a bivalve arthropod that remains unnamed but has intriguingly been dubbed the butterfly animal by researchers. This nickname stems from its resemblance to Lepidopteran insects, although it shares no biological relation to them. The largest specimens of this arthropod measure about 20 centimeters in width. Paleontologists speculate that this creature might be a type of crustacean, potentially linked to phyllocarids, although this similarity might only be superficial. The majority of the known specimens are preserved in an open valve position, providing unique insight into the structure. However, a rare specimen has been found that presents a lateral view, offering additional perspectives on its anatomy and potential lifestyle. The exact taxonomy of this arthropod, though, continues to be a subject of ongoing research and debate within the scientific community. The origin of the bird beak and palate, 2015. The research on the origin of the bird beak represents a significant stride in understanding evolutionary biology, mainly how specific anatomical features have allowed birds to adapt and thrive in various environmental niches. This study integrates paleontology, comparative anatomy, and experimental development biology to explore the evolution of the avian beak, focusing on its distinctiveness and versatility. Historically, the bird beak is understood as a structure consisting of fused premaxilli, which are notably different in shape from those of the archosaur ancestors. But comparing fossil data with existing bird species, researchers have understood the geometric uniqueness of the beak compared to the ancestral archosaur premaxilli. On the development front, the study examined gene expression domains in the embryonic faces of birds and several reptilian species. Two critical areas were the frontonasal ectodermal zone and the midfacial WNT responsive region. Birds exhibit unique median gene expression region not seen in the reptilian counterparts, suggesting a bird-specific development trajectory for the beak. To test these developmental mechanisms, researchers manipulate these pathways using inhibitors in chicken embryos, aiming to revert the gene expression patterns back to those observed in ancestral amniotes. These experimental manipulations resulted in changes to the FEZ and subsequently altered the WNT responsiveness to mirror the ancestral pattern. The phenotypic outcomes of the experiments were pretty striking. The altered development resulted in premaxilli that resembled the ancestral fossil forms more closely than modern beaked birds. Similarly, modifications in the palatal region also reflected a shift toward an ancestral phenotype, aligning with fossil evidence and the interconnected functionality of the avian premaxilli and palate in the kinetic beak system. Amlenituca. The Amlenituca is an interesting cryptid reported to inhabit the Congo rainforest in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and possibly Cameroon. This elephant-sized creature is feared by locals and known as the elephant killer for its aggressive behavior toward other large animals. Its physical description includes a body similar in shape to a rhinoceros with a heavy tail and a single long horn on its snout, supported by 4 short stump-like legs. The skin color ranges from brownish to gray. Described as semi-aquatic, the Amlenituca feeds on leafy plants like malombo. It emits noises that are described as snorts, rumbles, or growls. The composition of its horn has been a subject of debate too, with suggestions ranging from ivory, similar to elephant tusks, to keratin, like that of rhinoceros horns. This exact classification remains speculative though, without physical evidence, as no specimen has been examined to determine whether it resembles a ceratopsian dinosaur or an aquatic rhinoceros as some suggest. Historically, the first mention of this creature by name was in 1954 by Lucien Blanco, who noted its ferocious nature and considerable size, larger than a buffalo. Notable expeditions led by Dr. Roy P. Mackle in the early 1980s aimed to gather more information about the Amlenituca along with other cryptids, contributing significantly to the cryptid's lore. Extinction by boredom. On April 19, 2018, an interesting perspective was shared on the Bob Angle, a blog offering a new view of the world. The post titled "Did Dinosaurs Die from Boredom?" explores an unconventional theory about the extinction of dinosaurs. The post introduces a twist of the known extinction event by pondering if, hypothetically, the dinosaurs might have succumbed to boredom. Drawing inspiration from the movie Men in Black, which showcases our universe as a mere marble in a larger cosmic game, the blog speculates about higher dimensional beings possibly overseeing our universe as part of a grand experiment or a game, similar to cellular automata known as the Game of Life. This game demonstrates how simple rules in a simulation can lead to complex behaviors and outcomes. The hypothesis suggests that these higher dimensional beings might have tweaked our universe to keep it interesting, implying that the extinction event that wiped out the dinosaurs could have been an intentional act to rejuvenate a stagnant phase in Earth's ecological and evolutionary narrative. Colbert/Boger Alligator Temperature Tolerance Experiment 1946. In 1946, Edwin H. Colbert and Charles Boger conducted a notable experiment to study the temperature tolerance in alligators, which contributed to the understanding of thermoregulation in reptiles. This experiment was one of the early endeavors to scientifically explore how reptiles manage body temperature and how their environment influences their physiological processes. Colbert and Boger's study primarily focused on observing the effects of various temperature conditions on alligator physiology. They're particularly interested in how temperature affects the activity levels and metabolic rates of these reptiles. Their findings were pivotal in demonstrating that alligators, like many other reptiles, are ectothermic, meaning cold-blooded organisms that rely heavily on external heat sources to regulate their body temperature. The researchers placed alligators in controlled environments where they could systematically alter the temperature and observe the responses of the animals. They found that alligators have a preferred optimal temperature range where they're most active and healthy. Outside this range, the alligators' bodily functions, including metabolism, slowed significantly, and their activity levels decreased, showcasing their limited ability to internally regulate body heat compared to endothermic, meaning warm-blooded animals. So that ends the video. I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you for sticking around. If you did, leave some feedback in the comments if you have any, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.